Hey everyone, welcome back to Fanfic TV. Today we're diving into an amazing story called What If Saint Mungo's healer accidentally scanned Harry at age 3 and found his magic core was 90% drained by blood wards? If you love these stories, please hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps us bring more content to you. Without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 1. The Unexpected Diagnosis. Miss Eliza Bennet prided herself on noticing the little things about her nursery school students. 20 years of teaching had honed her instincts to a fine edge, and something about little Harry Potter had been setting off alarm bells since his first day. The boy was too small, too quiet, and far too watchful for a 3-year-old. When other children played, Harry observed from corners with those unsettlingly intelligent green eyes. When they shouted with laughter, he startled as though loud noises presaged danger. And most concerning, when snack time came, he ate with the deliberate care of someone who didn't expect another meal soon. Today, she'd finally had enough. Harry had arrived at Little Whinging Nursery School in clothes that hung off his thin frame like curtains, despite the autumn chill that had other children bundled in jackets. The bruise on his forearm, finger-shaped, she noted with professional dismay, was the final straw. "Mrs. Dursley, a word before you go," Eliza called, intercepting the horse-faced woman who'd dropped Harry off. Petunia Dursley's smile tightened. "I'm rather busy this morning, Miss Bennet. This won't take long." Eliza closed her classroom door partway, lowering her voice. "I've noticed some concerning patterns with Harry. He's significantly underweight, frequently arrives in inappropriate clothing, and today I observed bruising consistent with rough handling. Boys play rough," Petunia dismissed with a wave. "And he's simply small for his age. My Dudley is exceptionally robust, so perhaps the contrast seems stark. I've been teaching for 20 years, Mrs. Dursley. I know the difference between play injuries and— Are you accusing me of something?" Petunia's voice rose sharply. Eliza met her gaze steadily. "I'm expressing concern for a child in my care. Harry needs a proper medical checkup, Mrs. Dursley. Either you schedule one this week, or I'll be obligated to contact social services about my observations." The color drained from Petunia's face. "You wouldn't dare. I take my responsibility seriously." Eliza handed her a card. "Dr. Winters can see him tomorrow at 4. I've already arranged it." "How dare you? I'll need confirmation by tomorrow that you've kept the appointment, or I'll proceed with my report." "It's standard procedure, Mrs. Dursley. Nothing personal." Eliza watched Petunia storm out, thin lips pressed into a bloodless line. Through the window, she observed the woman roughly buckling Harry's cousin into a car seat, while sparing barely a glance for Harry himself, who climbed in unassisted despite his small stature. Something wasn't right with the Dursleys, and Eliza Bennet intended to find out what. Dr. Alan Winters had seen his fair share of neglected children during his 15 years as a pediatrician in Surrey, but something about the small boy sitting on his examination table struck him as unusual beyond the obvious signs of neglect. "Hello there, Harry. My name is Dr. Allen," he said, crouching to eye level. "I'm going to check how healthy you are today. Is that okay?" The boy nodded solemnly, those startling green eyes regarding him with caution. "Excellent. First, let's see how tall you are." As he guided Harry to the height measure, Dr. Winters noted Petunia Dursley watching with thinly veiled impatience from her chair in the corner. The disparity between her rotund son, who was currently dismantling a magazine in the waiting room, and this fragile child was striking. "Height is well below the 5th percentile," he murmured, making notes. "Weight as well. Harry, can you take a deep breath for me?" The examination proceeded methodically. Blood pressure, reflexes, vision, hearing, all documented with professional precision. But it was when Dr. Winters reached for his stethoscope that things took a strange turn. As the cool metal touched Harry's chest, the lights in the examination room flickered. The stethoscope itself grew uncomfortably hot in the doctor's hand. "That's odd," Dr. Winters muttered, setting the instrument aside. "Equipment malfunction." He reached for an otoscope to check Harry's ears, but as it neared the boy's head, the device sparked and went dead. What on earth? Harry looked terrified. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't mean to. It's not your fault, son. Dr. Winters reassured him automatically, though he was thoroughly confused. Just equipment problems. When he attempted to draw blood for routine tests, the needle bent before it could pierce skin. The digital thermometer displayed impossible readings, first 20 degrees Celsius, then 45, then nothing at all. By now, even Petunia Disley was watching with undisguised alarm. Mrs. Disley, has Harry ever experienced unusual reactions to electronic devices? Dr. Winters asked carefully. I don't know what you mean, she responded stiffly, but her eyes darted nervously to her nephew. Dr. Winters excused himself and stepped into the hallway, where he found his nurse, Sarah. Sarah, could you call Dr. Patil from neurology? Ask if she can come down for a consultation. And perhaps get the backup equipment from storage. When he returned, he found Harry huddled on the examination table, shoulders hunched as if expecting punishment. You're not in trouble, Harry, Dr. Winters said gently. Sometimes our bodies do interesting things we don't understand. That's why doctors exist, to figure it out. The boy didn't seem convinced. Dr. Winters tried a different approach. Do strange things happen around you sometimes, Harry? Things you can't explain? Harry's wide eyes darted to his aunt, who had gone very still. It's okay to tell me, the doctor encouraged. Sometimes, Harry whispered, barely audible. When I'm scared or angry. Petunia Disley stood abruptly. We're leaving. This is absurd. Mrs. Disley, I strongly advise against. He's fine. Just needs proper discipline and less coddling. Dr. Winters positioned himself between Petunia and the door. I cannot in good conscience release a patient showing these symptoms without proper diagnosis. If you insist on removing Harry against medical advice, I'll have no choice but to contact authorities immediately. The standoff was interrupted by a soft knock. Dr. Patil entered, her dark eyes taking in the scene with professional calm. Alan, you needed a neuroconsult? Her gaze fell on Harry, and something flickered across her expression. Recognition, perhaps? Yes, we're having some unusual equipment malfunctions when examining this patient. Dr. Winters explained the situation while Petunia Disley grew increasingly agitated. Dr. Patil approached Harry with a warm smile. Hello there. I'm Dr. Patil. She glanced at his chart. Harry Potter, is it? The boy nodded. Dr. Patil turned to Petunia, her expression suddenly cool and professional. Mrs. Disley, I need to speak with Dr. Winters privately. Would you mind waiting outside for a moment? The nurse can show you to our consultation room. I will not leave my nephew with, it's standard procedure. Dr. Patil interrupted smoothly. Sarah will stay with Harry. Hospital policy, I'm afraid. Something in her tone brooked no argument, and reluctantly, Petunia allowed herself to be led from the room. Once the door closed, Dr. Patil's demeanor changed completely. She drew what appeared to be a polished stick from her coat pocket and waved it in a complex pattern. The air seemed to shimmer around them. What are you doing? Dr. Winters asked, bewildered. Privacy charm. Dr. Patil replied matter-of-factly. Alan, do you trust me? Of course, Mira, but what? This boy is Harry Potter. She said it as though the name should mean something profound. And what you're witnessing is accidental magic during a medical crisis. Dr. Winters blinked. I'm sorry, did you say magic? Dr. Patil, Mira sighed. I'm a witch, Alan. I work at St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries 3 days a week. This hospital job is my muggle, non-magical, position. Under normal circumstances, Dr. Winters might have called for psychiatric assistance, but the events of the past half hour had been far from normal. And in 15 years of collaboration, Mira Patil had never been anything but rational and brilliant. You're serious, he realized. Completely. And Harry here is quite famous in our world. She knelt before the boy. Harry, has your aunt ever told you about magic? About your parents? Harry shook his head, eyes wide with confusion. I suspected as much. Mira turned to her colleague. Alan, this boy needs magical medical attention immediately. His wild magic is interfering with your equipment because something is deeply wrong with his magical core. His what? I'll explain later. Right now, I need your help. His aunt won't willingly take him to a magical hospital. We need to find a way to transfer him to St. Mungo's. Dr. Winters ran a hand through his thinning hair. You're asking me to help kidnap a child based on clear medical evidence that something is catastrophically wrong. Mira finished firmly. Look at his vitals, Alan. Look at his physical condition. Add in the magical disturbances. This child is in danger. Dr. Winters glanced at Harry, who was watching their exchange with that unnerving intensity. Whatever was happening here was beyond his medical training, but one thing was clear: the boy needed help. What do you need me to do? Mira's relief was palpable. Keep his aunt occupied for 10 minutes. That's all I need. With a reluctant nod, Dr. Winters left to confront Petunia Disley with a barrage of questions about Harry's diet, living conditions, and development, all legitimate concerns based on his examination. Meanwhile, Mira Patil touched a silver bracelet on her wrist, whispering urgently, Emergency code Merlin at Little Whinging Medical Center, Pediatric Exam Room 3. Magical minor in distress, identity confirmation, Harry Potter. Within minutes, while Dr. Winters was still methodically questioning an increasingly defensive Petunia Disley, 2 figures in what appeared to be security uniforms appeared in the hallway. To the Muggle staff, they seemed to have proper identification and paperwork. To Mira Patil, they were Oris Kingsley Shacklebolt and Amelia Bones, responding with remarkable speed to her emergency call. The boy? Kingsley asked quietly. Exam Room 3. Magical core instability, severe neglect, and I suspect much worse. Mira led them inside, where Harry sat exactly as they'd left him. Amelia Bones approached slowly, her kind face belying her official Department of Magical Law Enforcement position. Hello, Harry. I'm Amelia. We're here to help you feel better. Harry regarded her warily. Are you a doctor too? Something like that, she replied, glancing at Mira. A magical doctor. Magic isn't real, Harry said automatically, as if repeating a phrase he'd heard many times. Aunt Petunia says it's for freaks and liars. The 3 adults exchanged grim looks. Watch this, Harry, Mira said gently, drawing her wand again. With a flick and swish, she conjured a tiny glowing butterfly that fluttered around Harry's head. The boy's eyes widened in wonder as the butterfly landed on his finger, its wings pulsing with soft blue light. That's magic, Mira explained. Real magic. And you have it too, Harry. That's why strange things happen around you sometimes. But right now your magic is sick, and we need to take you to a special hospital to make it better. What about Aunt Petunia? Harry whispered. We'll explain everything to her, Kingsley assured him, though his expression suggested the explanation would be far from gentle. Can you be very brave for us, Harry? Amelia asked. We need to take you somewhere else right away. Harry hesitated, then nodded solemnly. Mira wrapped him in a hospital blanket while Kingsley produced a small golden hoop from his pocket. This is a portkey, a magical transport device, he explained. It will feel strange, but it's the fastest way to get you help. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Winters slipped back into the room, his face grim. Mrs. Disley is demanding to see Harry now. She's threatening to call the police. We'll handle it, Amelia assured him. Thank you for your assistance, Dr. Winters. Your intervention may have saved this child's life. Will I see him again? Dr. Winters asked, surprised by how quickly he'd grown attached to the quiet boy. I'll keep you informed, Mira promised. But for now, his care requires specialists in our world. Before Dr. Winters could respond further, the 3 adults and Harry touched the golden hoop. There was a flash of light, a sensation like being pulled inside out, and suddenly the exam room contained only a very bewildered pediatrician. Moments later, when Petunia Disley finally bullied her way past the nurse, she found an empty examination room and a doctor with a bizarre story about government agents and emergency medical transfers. Her screams about freaks and that blasted world confirmed everything Dr. Winters had begun to suspect about Harry Potter's situation, and left him wondering what sort of world he had just glimpsed. Healer Evelyn Clearwater had seen many unusual cases in her 15 years at St. Mungo's, but the arrival of Harry Potter, in the emergency magical traumas department sent ripples through the entire hospital. "Madam Bones! This is unexpected." Evelyn greeted the imposing witch who materialized in her department with a small child and 2 colleagues. She recognized Aura Shacklebolt and Dr. Patil, their liaison with the Muggle medical system, but it was the small boy wrapped in a Muggle hospital blanket who drew her attention. "Is that yes?" Amelia Bones confirmed quietly. "And we need absolute discretion, Healer Clearwater. No press, no visitors, no notifications until we understand what's happening." Evelyn nodded briskly, professional instincts overriding her surprise. "Of course. What are we dealing with?" "Severe magical disruption," Dr. Patil explained, transferring Harry to a floating stretcher with gentle hands. "He was interfering with Muggle medical equipment during a routine examination. I suspect core depletion, but I'm not a specialist." "Examination room 1 is prepared," Evelyn directed, leading them through the ward. With a wave of her wand, she activated the privacy wards around the hospital's most secure treatment room. "Child Services has been notified?" "I'm handling that aspect personally," Madam Bones replied. "Given who he is, and the circumstances," Evelyn understood immediately. The boy who lived, somehow neglected to the point of magical instability, was political dynamite. Inside the examination room, soft, golden light illuminated walls lined with healing runes. Diagnostic instruments hummed with magical energy, and a team of green-robed healers waited at attention. "This is Harry Potter, age 3, Evelyn announced to her team. "Presenting with suspected magical core depletion and signs of physical neglect. Standard diagnostic protocol, full core imaging, and immediate stabilization measures." As the healers moved into action, Evelyn approached Harry, who was watching the proceedings with wide, frightened eyes. "Hello, Harry. I'm Healer Evelyn," she said, crouching to his level. "We're going to do some special tests to see why you're not feeling well. Everything here is magical, so it might look strange to you, but nothing will hurt. Can you be brave for us?" Harry nodded, though his small fingers clutched the blanket tightly. "Excellent. First, we need to see your magical core." Evelyn drew her wand, rowan with phoenix feather, perfect for healing work, and traced a complex pattern over Harry's chest. "This spell will make your magic visible to us, like an image. Ready?" At Harry's nod, Evelyn cast Magici Revelio Maxima. A 3-dimensional image appeared above Harry's body, a swirling nebula of color that should have been a vibrant, pulsing sphere. Instead, what materialized was a dim, flickering cloud with alarming dark patches throughout. The team fell silent. "Merlin's beard," whispered the diagnostic specialist, Healer Chang. "His core is at less than 10% capacity. How is he even conscious?" Evelyn controlled her reaction with practiced discipline. "Harry, you're doing wonderfully. Now we need to check what's causing this. It won't hurt, but you might feel a tingling sensation." With another complex wand movement, Evelyn cast a deeper diagnostic spell. Glowing lines of information appeared in the air, detailing magical signatures and energy patterns within Harry's small body. Evelyn's blood ran cold as she interpreted the results. "There's a massive magical drain centered on his scar. Some kind of ward, blood-based, extremely powerful, is siphoning his magical energy constantly." "Blood wards?" Madam Bones stepped forward, her expression grave. "Who would have placed blood wards on a child?" "Someone who thought he needed extraordinary protection," Kingsley suggested quietly. "The wards are anchored to his mother's sacrifice." Evelyn continued studying the complex magical signatures. "Ingenious design, actually," meant to protect him from external threats by channeling his mother's protective magic through his bloodline. She frowned deeply. But something's gone catastrophically wrong. Instead of creating a stable protective bubble, it's consuming his own magic to maintain itself. It's like a parasitic spell. Can you remove it? Dr. Patil asked. Not without knowing exactly how it was cast, Evelyn replied. Blood magic this complex. Attempting to dismantle it blindly could kill him. Harry, who had been listening with that unnervingly adult focus, spoke up in a small voice. Is my magic sick because I'm a freak? The question sent a chill through the room. Evelyn placed a gentle hand on Harry's shoulder. No, Harry. You are absolutely not a freak. Your magic is wonderful and special. Someone cast a spell to protect you, but it went wrong. Like medicine that was supposed to help but is causing side effects instead. We need Dumbledore, Kingsley stated firmly. If these are the blood wards he placed, Dumbledore did this? Madam Bones's voice was dangerous. After that night, he said he'd placed Harry with his mother's sister under powerful protective enchantments. It must have been blood wards tied to Lily Potter's sacrifice. Get him here. Now. Bones's tone left no room for argument. And find me everything we have on the Dursleys. I want to know exactly what environment has been draining this child's magic for the past 2 years. While Kingsley departed to contact Dumbledore, Evelyn focused on stabilization. Harry, we need to give you some medicine to help your magic get stronger. It will taste like peppermint ice cream. Would that be okay? The boy nodded, and Evelyn administered the first of several core-strengthening potions, specially formulated for pediatric patients. Good job. She praised as Harry swallowed the potion without complaint. Now we need to put some special monitoring charms on you to watch your magic while we figure out how to fix the problem. As Evelyn worked, attaching monitoring spells that would track Harry's magical core stability, she noticed Madame Bones deep in conversation with Dr. Patil near the door. Complete violation of magical child welfare statutes. Bones was saying. Even if Dumbledore thought blood protection was necessary, there are protocols. The Muggle evidence is concerning as well. Patil replied. Significant malnutrition, possible physical abuse, clear emotional neglect. Dr. Winters was ready to contact their child protection services before I intervened. Document everything. Bones instructed. We'll need it for both magical and Muggle authorities. Evelyn returned her attention to Harry, who was watching the colorful monitoring spells with cautious fascination. These lights show us how your magic is doing, she explained, pointing to the pulsing indicators. See the blue one? That tells us your magic is starting to accept the medicine. The green one shows how fast your heart is beating. What's the red one? Harry asked, pointing to a troubling crimson indicator flashing near the representation of his scar. Evelyn hesitated. That's showing us where the problem is. The spell that's making you feel tired and making strange things happen around you. Before Harry could ask more questions, the door opened to admit Albus Dumbledore, his normally twinkling eyes serious as he took in the scene. Madam Bones. Healer Clearwater. His gaze fell on Harry, and something like pain crossed his aged features. Harry, my boy. I did not expect to see you here. Harry shrank back slightly on the examination table. Madam Bones stepped forward, her posture rigid with controlled anger. Albus, did you place blood wards around Harry Potter after his parents' deaths? Dumbledore straightened, suddenly every inch the powerful wizard rather than the grandfatherly figure he typically presented. I did what was necessary to protect the boy from Voldemort's remaining followers. The blood protection through his mother's sister was the strongest possible shield. Then you need to explain. Evelyn interjected. Why those wards are draining his magical core to the point of potential permanent damage. For perhaps the first time in her life, Evelyn witnessed Albus Dumbledore genuinely shocked. That's not possible, he murmured, approaching the diagnostic display still hovering over Harry. The wards draw power from the blood connection, not from Harry himself. See for yourself. Evelyn challenged, highlighting the magical energy flow with her wand. The ward structure is inverting. Instead of creating a protective bubble using the ambient magic reinforced by the blood connection, it's actively drawing from his core to sustain itself. Dumbledore studied the magical signature, his expression growing increasingly grave. This is unexpected. The wards should have established a symbiotic relationship with his innate magic, not a parasitic one. Well, they didn't. Madame Bones stated flatly. They've been draining him for 2 years. Healer Clearwater, what's your assessment of the damage? Evelyn straightened, meeting Dumbledore's eyes directly. If this had continued undetected, Harry would likely have suffered complete magical burnout by age 11. His core is already showing signs of permanent scarring. He would have been lucky to retain enough magic to cast the Lumos by the time he reached Hogwarts age. The implications hung heavy in the air. The boy who lived, rendered nearly a squib by the very protections meant to keep him safe. I have made a grave error, Dumbledore admitted, his voice hollow. I was so focused on protecting him from external threats that I failed to consider how the wards might interact with his developing core. Can they be removed? Kingsley asked. Not safely, not all at once, Dumbledore replied, studying the magical signatures more closely. They're too deeply integrated with his magical identity now. But they can be modified, redirected. He looked at Evelyn. With your permission, Healer Clearwater, I would like to attempt to adjust the ward structure to stop the drain. Evelyn considered this carefully. Under normal circumstances, allowing the person who created a harmful spell to modify it would be unconscionable. But blood magic of this complexity was rare, and time was of the essence. I'll allow it under supervision, she decided. Healer Blackwood specializes in ward dissolution. She'll monitor every step. Dumbledore nodded in acceptance. Of course. Harry's well-being must be the priority now. While they waited for Healer Blackwood to arrive, Evelyn administered another strengthening potion to Harry, who was beginning to show signs of fatigue from the intensive magical diagnostics. You're being very brave, she told him as he drank the potion. Would you like to rest for a little while? We can make the bed extra comfortable. Harry nodded sleepily, the combined effects of magical exhaustion and the calming agent in the potion taking hold. As Evelyn gently adjusted the bed to recline and tucked the blankets around Harry, Madame Bones approached Dumbledore, her voice low but intense. This is beyond a simple mistake, Albus. You placed that child with muggles who clearly despise magic, under protections that have been killing him slowly, and then you left him there without proper monitoring for 2 years. I had monitoring charms, Dumbledore defended, though without his usual certainty. They showed he was alive and relatively well. Relatively well? Bones repeated incredulously. Have you seen his physical condition? The healers report malnutrition, signs of physical neglect, and psychological conditioning against his own magical nature. I believe the blood protection outweighed other considerations, Dumbledore replied, sounding older than Evelyn had ever heard him. Petunia Dursley is Lily's sister. I thought. I hoped that blood would overcome prejudice. Well, it didn't, Bones stated flatly. And now we have a legal and ethical disaster on our hands. The boy who lived, neglected to the point of magical endangerment, with the chief warlock responsible for his placement. What do you propose, Amelia? There was resignation in Dumbledore's voice. First, we stabilize Harry medically. Then we find him a proper magical guardian, one who will nurture his magic, not fear it. Bones's expression hardened. And you, Albus, will face the Wisengamot to explain your actions. Your intentions may have been good, but the outcome is indefensible. The arrival of Healer Blackwood, a severe-looking witch with intricate ward-breaking tools hovering around her, interrupted the tense exchange. Healer Clearwater, I understand you have a blood ward situation? She asked briskly. Yes, Helena. If you could review the diagnostic results? Evelyn guided her colleague to the magical display still monitoring Harry's core. While the specialists conferred, Dr. Patil approached with a stack of parchment. I've compiled the Muggle medical evidence, she told Madame Bones. It's quite thorough. Dr. Winters has apparently had concerns about Harry for some time. Excellent. Bones replied. We'll need it for both sets of proceedings. She glanced at the sleeping child. What's your medical opinion on recovery, doctor? Physically, with proper nutrition and care, children are remarkably resilient. He should catch up to normal growth parameters within a year or two. Patil's expression grew more concerned. The psychological effects of being told his magic is freakish may take longer to address. And as for his magical core, that's where things get complicated. Evelyn interjected, rejoining their conversation. Healer Blackwood believes we can modify the wards with Dumbledore's assistance, but the process will take time, days, possibly weeks of careful spell work. And in the meantime? Bones asked. Harry needs to remain here under constant monitoring. His core is critically depleted. We'll need aggressive magical replenishment therapy, specialized nutrition potions, and complete magical rest. Bones nodded decisively. I'll assign aura protection immediately. Given who he is, security is paramount. No announcements about his presence here until we've established a proper care plan and legal guardianship. As they spoke, Dumbledore and Healer Blackwood had begun the delicate process of examining the blood ward structure, their wands moving in synchronous patterns over Harry's sleeping form. Remarkable construction, Blackwood muttered, almost grudgingly impressed. Anchored in sacrifice magic, reinforced through blood lineage, but there's a fundamental flaw in the implementation. I see it now, Dumbledore acknowledged, tracing a complex knot of magical energy near Harry's heart. The ward is treating Harry himself as an external magical entity because of the Horcrux fragment in his scar. It's attempting to protect him from his own magic. The room went deadly silent. What did you just say? Bones demanded, her voice dangerously quiet. Dumbledore froze, clearly realizing he had spoken aloud a suspicion he had kept private. I have had a theory, he said carefully, about the nature of Harry's connection to Voldemort. The diagnostic spell seemed to confirm it. Evelyn stepped forward, horrified understanding dawning. Are you saying Harry Potter has a piece of you-know-whose soul attached to his scar? A fragment, yes. Inadvertently created the night Voldemort's killing curse rebounded. Dumbledore's face showed his age fully now. I had suspected, but until now, had no way to confirm. And you placed blood wards around a child carrying a Horcrux without considering the magical interactions? Healer Blackwood's professional composure cracked. Albus, that's beyond irresponsible. It's practically criminal negligence. I made a calculation, Dumbledore replied heavily. To protect him from Death Eaters while I researched how to address the Horcrux issue. Well, your calculation nearly killed him, Evelyn stated bluntly. The wards have been treating both Harry's natural magic and the Horcrux as threats, attempting to suppress both while maintaining the protection. It's a miracle he hasn't suffered complete magical collapse already. Madame Bones had gone very still, her expression unreadable. Albus Dumbledore, as head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, I am officially removing you from any decision-making regarding Harry Potter's care and custody, effective immediately. Dumbledore did not protest, which perhaps spoke more than anything to his recognition of the gravity of his error. However, Bones continued pragmatically, we still need your expertise to safely modify the wards. You will work under healer's supervision to stabilize Harry's condition. Once that is complete, you will submit yourself to a formal inquiry by the Wisengamot regarding your actions in this matter. I understand, Dumbledore said quietly. I will do whatever is necessary to help Harry now. See that you do. Bones turned to Evelyn. Healer Clearwater, you're hereby appointed as Harry's primary medical guardian until permanent arrangements can be made. I want daily reports on his condition. Of course. Evelyn agreed, her mind already calculating treatment protocols for the unprecedented case before her, a child with a depleted magical core, parasitic blood wards, and apparently a soul fragment from the darkest wizard of their age. As if sensing he was the topic of discussion, Harry stirred in his sleep, his small face twisting in discomfort. Evelyn moved immediately to his side, casting a gentle diagnostic charm. His core levels are fluctuating, she reported with concern. The discussion of the Horcrux may have agitated it. We need to begin stabilization immediately. With practiced efficiency, the medical team moved into action. Dumbledore and Healer Blackwood began the painstaking process of modifying the blood ward structure, while Evelyn prepared a series of specialized potions designed to nurture and strengthen Harry's damaged magical core. Through it all, the small boy slept on, unaware that his unexpected visit to a Muggle doctor had set in motion events that would fundamentally alter the course of his life, and perhaps the future of the wizarding world itself. 3 days later, Evelyn Clearwater sat at Harry's bedside, reviewing his latest magical core readings with cautious optimism. The emergency stabilization had succeeded in halting the drain from the blood wards, though the modified protection was a shadow of Dumbledore's original design. Now, instead of an active shield against dark magic, it functioned more as an early warning system, alerting the monitoring charms if anyone with harmful intent approached Harry. "Looking much better today, little one," she murmured as Harry focused intently on the picture book hovering before him, a simple charm she had cast to help him grow comfortable with benign magic. "The butterfly is changing colors," Harry observed, his voice still soft but gaining confidence with each day in the pediatric magical healing ward. "That's right. Magic can be beautiful and helpful, just like the butterfly." Evelyn had made it her personal mission to counter years of anti-magic conditioning from the Dursleys. "How are you feeling this morning?" Harry considered this with the seriousness that continued to surprise her. "Less tired. And my head doesn't hurt anymore." "Excellent. That means the potions are working." Evelyn made a note on her chart. The headaches had been a concerning symptom, potentially related to the Horcrux fragment that Dumbledore had identified. That revelation had thrown the hospital into carefully controlled chaos. A team of specialized curse breakers and soul magic experts had been discreetly assembled, working in adjoining research chambers to develop a safe extraction protocol. The very idea of a Horcrux in a living host, let alone a child, had been virtually unthinkable before Harry Potter. A soft knock at the door announced the arrival of Madame Bones, who had become a daily visitor. "Good morning, Healer Clearwater." "Hello, Harry." Bones smiled warmly at the boy, who had gradually warmed to her no-nonsense manner. "I see you're enjoying the tale of the changing butterfly." Harry nodded. "It's magic," he said, a hint of pride in his voice that made Evelyn's heart swell. 3 days ago, he would have whispered the word as though it were forbidden. "Indeed it is. And speaking of magic, I brought someone to meet you." Bones gestured to the hallway, and a tall, distinguished-looking wizard with a monocle entered. "This is Bartemius Crouch, head of the Department of International Magical Cooperation. He's been helping us with your situation." Evelyn knew, though Harry did not, that Crouch was also one of the Wisengamot's foremost experts on magical guardianship law. His presence indicated that decisions about Harry's future placement were advancing. "Hello, Mr. Potter," Crouch said formally, though his usual stiffness seemed softened somewhat. "I understand you're feeling better." "Yes, sir," Harry replied, automatically sitting straighter. His quick deference to authority figures was another troubling remnant of his time with the Dursleys. "Excellent. Madame Bones and I need to speak with Healer Clearwater for a moment. Would it be all right if Nurse Wimbledon came to sit with you?" Crouch nodded toward the cheerful young nurse who had become one of Harry's favorites. At Harry's agreement, Nurse Wimbledon entered with a new magical puzzle that immediately captured his attention, allowing the adults to step into the adjoining consultation room. "His core readings are improving steadily," Evelyn reported once privacy charms were in place. "The modified wards no longer drain his magic, though they provide significantly less protection than Dumbledore originally intended." "What's your prognosis for recovery?" Crouch asked, conjuring a self-writing quill that hovered ready over an official-looking parchment. "With continued therapeutic potions and a nurturing magical environment, I believe he can achieve full core regeneration within 6 to 8 months. There may be some residual scarring that could affect complex spell work later in life, but nothing that should significantly impair his magical education." "And the other matter?" Bones asked delicately. Evelyn's expression tightened. The Horcrux remains stable for now. The curse-breaking team has developed 3 potential extraction protocols, but all carry significant risks. They're refining the approaches and recommend waiting until Harry's core has strengthened further before attempting removal. Crouch nodded gravely. This brings us to the question of placement and guardianship. The Dursleys have been formally investigated by both magical and Muggle authorities. The evidence of neglect is overwhelming. They've admitted to deliberately suppressing Harry's magic. Bones added, her disgust evident. Apparently, they believed they could stamp it out of him if they punished any signs of accidental magic severely enough. Evelyn felt a surge of protective anger. That approach could have killed him, even without the blood wards draining his core. Magical suppression in developing children can lead to devastating magical explosions or internal damage. Indeed. We've revoked their custody permanently. Bones handed Evelyn a sealed scroll. This is the official custody determination from the Wisengamoth's Family Magic Council. As his primary healer, you should be informed of the decision. Evelyn broke the seal and read the document carefully, her eyebrows rising in surprise. Sirius Black? But isn't he imprisoned? Yes. Crouch confirmed, his expression pained. Or rather, he was. Our investigation into Harry's situation led to some uncomfortable discoveries regarding Black's case. Specifically, the complete absence of a trial or even basic Veritaserum questioning. When we learned that Dumbledore had circumvented the normal guardianship procedures for Harry, we began reviewing the entire aftermath of the Potter murders. Bones explained. Black was Harry's legal guardian according to the Potters' will, a will that was sealed on Dumbledore's authority immediately after their deaths. Under emergency questioning yesterday, Black provided memories and testimony under Veritaserum that clearly establish his innocence. Peter Pettigrew was the Potters' secret keeper and betrayed them to Voldemort. Evelyn sat back stunned. So Harry's legal guardian has been wrongfully imprisoned for 2 years while he suffered with abusive relatives? Precisely. Crouch confirmed, looking distinctly uncomfortable. The Ministry is facing significant legal liability. We're expediting Black's full exoneration and rehabilitation. Where is he now? St. Mungo's secure wing. Bones replied. Azkaban has taken its toll, though he's been spared the worst effects by his animagus abilities. The healers believe he'll make a full recovery with time. And you intend to place Harry with him? After what he's been through? Not immediately, Crouch assured her. Black will require time to recover, and Harry needs stability for his magical healing. The guardianship ruling establishes Black's legal rights while allowing for a transitional period. During this transition, Harry needs a temporary magical guardian who can provide a supportive environment for his core healing. Bones explained. Someone with healing knowledge, a stable household, and no political affiliations that might compromise his security. Understanding dawned on Evelyn. You want me to take him. You're his primary healer, you've established rapport, and your family home is already under significant protective enchantments due to your previous work with sensitive cases. Bones confirmed. It would be a temporary arrangement, perhaps 3 to 4 months while Black completes his recovery and establishes a suitable home. Evelyn considered the proposal carefully. She lived alone in a comfortable cottage in a mixed magical Muggle village, left to her by her parents. Her schedule at St. Mungo's was demanding but flexible, and she had grown undeniably attached to the solemn little boy with the remarkable green eyes. What about the Horcrux removal? That procedure will require specialized facilities. St. Mungo's would remain his primary treatment center, Crouch assured her. This would be a healing foster placement, not a separation from medical care. Evelyn thought of Harry, slowly learning to trust that magic could be beautiful rather than frightening, gradually accepting that adults might protect rather than punish him. The idea of disrupting his fragile progress with another institutional placement troubled her. I'll need to modify my work schedule, she said finally. And the cottage will require additional protection suitable for a child. But yes, I'll provide transitional guardianship if Harry is comfortable with the arrangement. Relief crossed both officials' faces. Excellent, Bones said warmly. We'll arrange for you to meet Black tomorrow. Despite his condition, he's been asking about Harry constantly. I believe he'll be reassured knowing Harry will be with a healer he trusts while they both recover. As the adults finalized the arrangements, none of them noticed the small, attentive face that had appeared in the doorway. Harry Potter, who had slipped away from his nurse's momentary distraction, had heard enough to understand that big changes were coming, again. But unlike the fearful uncertainty that had characterized his young life until now, he felt a tentative flicker of something new, hope. Are you sure you want to do this today? Evelyn asked gently, adjusting Harry's new robes, the first properly fitted clothing he had ever owned. We could wait until you're feeling stronger. Harry shook his head with determination. I want to meet him now. He knew my parents. A week had passed since the guardianship decision. Harry's condition had stabilized enough for short excursions from the pediatric ward, and today would mark his first meeting with Sirius Black, the godfather he hadn't known existed until recently. The past 7 days had been transformative for the boy. With his magic no longer being drained and proper nutrition potions rebuilding his physical strength, Harry had begun to show glimpses of the child he might have been without the Dursleys' influence. He still spoke softly and watched adults warily, but occasional smiles now brightened his serious face, especially when surrounded by the simple magic that Evelyn incorporated into his daily healing routine. All right then. Remember, Mr. Black has been sick too, so he might seem a bit different than other grown-ups you've met. But he cares about you very much. They made their way to the secure rehabilitation wing, where patients recovering from magical or psychological trauma received specialized care. Oris Shacklebolt nodded respectfully as they approached Sirius Black's room. He's having a good day, Kingsley informed them quietly. The healers say the night terrors are lessening. Evelyn squeezed Harry's small hand reassuringly as they entered the room. Sirius Black sat in an enchanted chair by the window, sunlight illuminating the haunted angles of his once handsome face. He had gained weight since his emergency release from Azkaban, but still resembled a shadow of the vibrant young man he had once been. At their entrance, he turned, and his gaunt face transformed with a smile of such naked emotion that Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "Harry," he breathed, half rising before catching himself. "Merlin, you look so much like James. But those eyes, pure lily." Harry regarded the stranger cautiously, unconsciously pressing closer to Evelyn's side. "Hello," he said softly. Sirius swallowed hard, visibly restraining himself from rushing forward. "Hello, Harry. I'm Sirius. I was your dad's best friend. And I'm your godfather." "I know," Harry replied. "Healer Evelyn told me. She said you're getting better too?" A pained look crossed Sirius's face. "That's right. The healers are helping me, just like they're helping you." He gestured to the chair beside him. "Would you like to sit? I've been hoping to tell you about your parents, if you'd like to hear about them." Harry glanced up at Evelyn, who nodded encouragingly. Carefully, he approached and climbed into the offered chair. "Did they really have magic too? Like me?" he asked, the lingering wonder in his voice a stark reminder of how the Dursleys had lied about his heritage. "They did," Sirius confirmed, his voice strengthening. "Your dad was brilliant at transfiguration. That's magic that changes one thing into another. And your mum was a genius with charms and potions. She could make a feather dance in the air with just a flick of her wand." Harry's eyes widened. "Like the butterfly book?" "Even better." Sirius smiled, warming to his subject. "She used to create tiny stars that would float around your crib when you were a baby. You'd laugh and try to catch them in your little hands." For the next hour, Evelyn watched as Sirius shared carefully chosen stories of Harry's parents, their school days, their wedding, their love for their son. He avoided darker topics, focusing instead on the joy and magic that had filled Harry's first year of life. With each story, Harry seemed to unfurl slightly, his questions becoming more frequent and eager. When Harry eventually showed signs of tiring, Evelyn stepped forward. "I think that's enough for today. Harry needs his rest, and I'm sure you do too, Mr. Black." "Sirius, please," he insisted. And yes, of course. He turned to Harry with unmasked affection. Can you come again tomorrow? I have so many more stories to share. Harry nodded, a small but genuine smile brightening his face. I'd like that. As they prepared to leave, Sirius beckoned Evelyn aside while Harry examined a magical photograph of his parents that Sirius had been allowed to keep during his imprisonment. How is he really? Sirius asked quietly, his voice rough with emotion. They've told me about the core depletion, but not much else. He's improving steadily, Evelyn assured him. His core is regenerating faster than we initially projected. Physically, he's responding well to the nutrition potions, though he's still significantly underweight. The psychological healing will take longer. And the thing in his scar? Sirius could barely form the words. Stable for now. The Cursebreakers are refining the extraction protocol. They believe they'll be ready to attempt removal in approximately 3 months, once his core has strengthened sufficiently to withstand the procedure. Sirius ran a shaking hand through his hair. I failed him, Healer Clearwater. I went after Pettigrew instead of staying with Harry. If I hadn't, you can't change the past. Evelyn interrupted gently. But you're here now, and that's what matters to Harry. The transition plan, you'll be taking him soon? Yes, once his initial treatment cycle completes next week. He'll continue daily therapy here, but the home environment should accelerate his healing. Sirius nodded, his gaze returning to Harry. Thank you? For saving him. For being willing to care for him until I can. His expression hardened slightly. And for not being Albus Bloody Dumbledore, with his greater good calculations. Evelyn didn't respond to that directly. The ongoing Wisengamot inquiry into Dumbledore's actions regarding Harry's placement had sent shockwaves through magical Britain. The revelations about the Blood Ward's effect on Harry's magic had damaged the headmaster's reputation significantly, though many still defended his intentions if not his methods. Harry's well-being is my only concern, she said simply. And right now, that means ensuring he has stability, proper medical care, and people who genuinely care about him. Like you, Sirius observed shrewdly. Evelyn smiled softly. It's hard not to grow attached. He's a remarkable child. That he is. Sirius's gaze lingered on his godson. James and Lily would be grateful to you. So am I. As they left the rehabilitation wing, Harry clutching the photograph Sirius had insisted he keep, Evelyn reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. A concerned Muggle teacher's intervention, a routine medical examination gone awry, and the unexpected discovery of near-fatal magical depletion had altered the course of Harry Potter's life, and perhaps the future of the wizarding world itself. Did you like meeting your godfather? She asked as they made their way back to the pediatric ward. Harry nodded thoughtfully. He's sad inside. Like his magic is hurt too. The observation, so insightful from a 3-year-old, reminded Evelyn why she had agreed to become Harry's transitional guardian. Beneath the trauma and the famous scar was a perceptive, resilient child who deserved the chance to heal and grow into his remarkable potential. Yes, he is, she acknowledged. But he's healing, just like you. And soon you'll both be strong enough to make a new family together. Harry considered this, his small fingers tracing the edges of the photograph where his parents waved and smiled, eternally young and full of love for the son they had died protecting. I think I'd like that, he said finally, with the simple clarity of a child who had known too little happiness but could still recognize its possibility. And in that moment, despite the challenges still ahead, the Horcrux extraction, the long process of core regeneration, the psychological healing from years of neglect, Evelyn Clearwater felt something she hadn't expected when the boy who lived first arrived in her emergency ward, genuine hope for Harry Potter's future. A future that, thanks to an unexpected diagnosis and the intervention it triggered, now held the promise of magic, family, and the childhood he should have had all along. Chapter 2 New Beginnings. Evelyn Clearwater's cottage sat nestled on the outskirts of the small mixed magical Muggle village of Windbourne, far enough from neighbors to provide privacy but close enough to civilization that a small boy wouldn't feel isolated. The two-story stone structure with its slate roof and climbing roses looked like something from a storybook, which was precisely why Evelyn had shown Harry photographs before his release from St. Mungo's, wanting him to feel excitement rather than anxiety about his new temporary home. "Is this really where we'll live?" Harry asked as they approached the garden gate, his small hand clutching hers. Despite 2 weeks of intensive healing potions, he remained thin, though the hollow look had left his cheeks. "It is," Evelyn confirmed, waving her wand to deactivate the protective wards that had been significantly enhanced over the past few days. "My parents left it to me when they moved to France. I think you'll like it here." Harry's eyes widened as the gate swung open of its own accord, revealing a garden where flowers seemed to shimmer with faint, colorful light. "Is that magic too?" "Yes, those are luminous lilies. They absorb sunlight during the day and glow softly at night." Evelyn had deliberately chosen child-friendly, beautiful magic for Harry's new environment. Nothing frightening, nothing that would remind him of the draining wards that had nearly consumed his magic. As they walked the stone path to the front door, a flutter of wings announced the arrival of a tawny owl, who landed gracefully on a nearby post. "Hello, Archimedes," Evelyn greeted. "This is Harry. He'll be staying with us for a while." Harry stared at the owl with fascination. "Does he deliver letters like in the stories?" "He does. Very important owl, aren't you, Archimedes?" The owl hooted with dignity, puffing its feathers. "Can I learn to send letters too?" Harry asked tentatively. "Absolutely. In fact," Evelyn knelt beside him, "I thought we might write to your godfather this evening. The healers say he's been asking when he can expect his first letter from you." The smile that bloomed across Harry's face was still rare enough to feel like a victory. Sirius and Harry had forged a remarkably quick bond over the past 2 weeks, their shared healing creating a connection that transcended the years lost between them. The promise of continued communication during their separation had been crucial to Harry's willingness to leave the hospital for Evelyn's cottage. Inside, the house welcomed them with warmth. A fire sprang to life in the hearth as they entered the living room, and soft magical lights illuminated the cozy space filled with books, comfortable furniture, and subtle enchantments. "Your room is upstairs," Evelyn explained, watching Harry take in his surroundings with the careful assessment she'd come to recognize, the habit of a child who had learned to navigate unpredictable environments. "Would you like to see it?" Harry nodded, following her up the wooden staircase. The room she had prepared for him was nothing like the cupboard where he had spent his early years. Spacious and bright, with a window seat overlooking the garden, it contained a proper bed with a quilt depicting magical creatures that moved subtly across the fabric. Bookshelves held children's stories from both magical and muggle worlds, and a toy chest waited to be explored. "This is for me?" Harry asked, his voice hushed with disbelief. "All yours," Evelyn confirmed. "The wardrobe has new clothes that should actually fit, and—" she pointed to a small, glowing orb hovering near the bed. "That's a nightlight charm. If you ever feel scared or need me during the night, just touch it and say my name, and I'll know." Harry approached the orb cautiously, his fingers hovering near its soft light. "It won't hurt me?" The question broke Evelyn's heart a little. "No, Harry. Nothing in this house will hurt you or drain your magic. I promise." His tentative smile as he finally touched the orb, which pulsed warmly in response, was worth every galleon she'd spent preparing the room. "Now," Evelyn said briskly, not wanting to overwhelm him with emotion, "shall we have some tea and biscuits before your first home healing session?" Harry's daily treatment regimen would continue here: specialized potions to strengthen his magical core, gentle exercises to help him connect safely with his recovering magic, and monitoring spells to track his progress. The goal was to create a healing routine that felt natural rather than clinical, integrated into a normal childhood rather than dominating it. As they headed downstairs, Evelyn reflected on how far they'd already come from that first critical day at St. Mungo's. Harry's magical core, once dangerously depleted to less than 10% capacity, had already regenerated to nearly 30%, a remarkable recovery that the healers attributed partly to his young age and partly to some innate resilience they couldn't quite explain. The Horcrux remained a shadow over his future, but for now, it was stable, contained within carefully monitored wards that prevented it from influencing either Harry's mind or magic. In 2 months, if his recovery continued at this pace, they would attempt the extraction ritual that the curse-breaking team was still refining. Until then, Evelyn's job was straightforward, if not simple: help Harry heal, help him learn to trust, and help him discover the joy and magic that the Dursleys had tried to extinguish. Focus on the feather, Harry. Imagine it floating, just a tiny bit. 3 weeks into their new routine, Evelyn sat cross-legged on the living room floor opposite Harry, a white owl feather resting on the carpet between them. These controlled magic exercises, designed to help Harry connect safely with his recovering core, had become his favorite part of the daily healing regimen. Harry's face scrunched in concentration, his green eyes fixed intently on the feather. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, almost imperceptibly, the feather twitched. "Well done!" Evelyn praised, genuinely impressed. Most magical children couldn't manage even this level of controlled wandless magic until age 7 or 8. Your core readings just spiked positively. That's exactly the kind of healthy connection we want to establish. Harry's smile was equal parts pride and relief. It didn't explode this time. Explode? Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Harry looked down, suddenly uncertain. At the other house. Sometimes when I tried to make things happen, they exploded. Uncle Vernon said it was because my freakishness was dangerous. Evelyn controlled the flash of anger that always surfaced when Harry mentioned the Dursleys. That wasn't because your magic is dangerous, Harry. It was because they forced you to suppress it. Magic needs healthy expression, like breathing. When it's bottled up too long, it can come out suddenly. Like shaking a fizzy drink? Exactly like that. Evelyn smiled at the apt comparison. But here, you're learning to open the bottle slowly and carefully, so nothing explodes. They continued the exercise for a few more minutes before moving on to the next part of his treatment, a specially formulated strengthening potion followed by monitoring spells to check his progress. Your core is up to 38% capacity now, Evelyn noted, reading the colorful indicators that appeared above Harry's heart. That's a 3% increase just this week. Is that good? Harry asked, watching the swirling colors with fascination. Very good. At this rate, you might reach 50% before we attempt the extraction ritual. Evelyn kept her tone light, but this was significant news. The curse breakers had initially believed they would need to proceed with Harry's core at around 40% capacity, still dangerously low for such a complex magical procedure. And then the bad thing in my scar will be gone? Evelyn nodded. They had explained the Horcrux situation to Harry in simplified terms. A piece of dark magic from Voldemort had gotten stuck in his scar the night his parents died, and it needed to be removed so his own magic could grow properly. That's right. And after that, your magic should grow even faster. Harry touched his scar thoughtfully. And will I go to live with Sirius then? If the healers say he's ready, yes. Evelyn sat beside him on the sofa. How would you feel about that? I'd like it, Harry said with surprising certainty. He tells good stories about my mum and dad. And he doesn't think magic is freakish. Their daily correspondence with Sirius had become a cornerstone of Harry's new routine. Each evening, Harry dictated letters, as he was still learning to write, describing his day and his progress, which Evelyn sent via Archimedes. Each morning, Sirius's replies arrived, full of encouragement, memories of Harry's parents, and updates on his own healing journey. Through these letters, a relationship was forming that would eventually become Harry's permanent family. Evelyn found herself admiring how seriously Sirius took this responsibility, despite his own traumatic recovery from Azkaban. The man she met briefly at St. Mungo's had been shattered, but with each letter to Harry, she witnessed pieces being carefully reassembled. Shall we write today's letter after dinner? Evelyn suggested, rising to prepare their meal. You can tell him about the feather. Harry nodded eagerly, following her to the kitchen. Another positive development in their weeks together had been Harry's growing comfort with normal domestic routines. Initially, he had insisted on trying to cook and clean. To earn his keep, habits ingrained by the Dursleys. Gently but firmly, Evelyn had redirected these impulses, involving him in age-appropriate tasks while making it clear that his place in her home was not conditional on service. Now, he helped set the table while Evelyn prepared a simple but nutritious meal, chatting about the magical plants in the garden and the children's story they had read that morning. It was, Evelyn reflected, beginning to feel like a family routine rather than a healer-patient relationship, a development that both warmed her heart and reminded her of the temporary nature of their arrangement. Their peaceful dinner was interrupted by a soft chime from the fireplace, the magical equivalent of a telephone ring, alerting them to an incoming flu call. "I'll just see who that is," Evelyn said, rising from the table. "Keep eating, Harry. It's probably just St. Mungo's checking in." But when she activated the flu connection, it wasn't a hospital colleague who appeared in the green flames, but the stern face of Amelia Bones. "Healer Clearwater, I apologize for interrupting your evening," Bones began without preamble. "But there have been developments in the Black case that may affect Harry's situation. May I come through?" Evelyn glanced back at Harry, who was watching curiously from the table. "Of course. Give me just a moment to prepare Harry." After explaining to Harry that an important ministry official needed to speak with her about grown-up matters, and setting him up in the adjoining room with a magical picture book that read itself aloud, Evelyn reopened the flu connection. Amelia Bones stepped through, brushing a speck of soot from her formal robes. "Thank you for accommodating me on such short notice. How is Mr. Potter progressing?" "Remarkably well," Evelyn replied, guiding her visitor to the living room. "His core capacity has increased to 38%, and he's beginning controlled magic exercises with positive results. Psychologically, he's forming healthy attachments and showing appropriate curiosity about magic." "Excellent news," Bones nodded. "That may make what I'm about to tell you somewhat easier." She took a seat, her expression serious. "The Wisengamot inquiry into Dumbledore's actions regarding Harry's placement has uncovered additional irregularities, specifically concerning Sirius Black's imprisonment." Evelyn frowned. "Beyond the lack of a trial, you mean?" "Yes. Under Veritaserum questioning, Barty Crouch Sr. has admitted to suppressing evidence that would have exonerated Black immediately after the Potters' murders. It appears he was attempting to close the case quickly during the chaos following Voldemort's fall, and Black was a convenient scapegoat. That's disturbing, but how does it affect Harry's situation now?" Bones leaned forward slightly. "Because Crouch's confession has accelerated Black's formal exoneration process. He's been officially cleared of all charges as of this morning, with full restoration of his rights, properties, and assets. The Wisengamot has also formally recognized his status as Harry Potter's rightful magical guardian." Understanding dawned on Evelyn. "You're saying he could take custody of Harry immediately?" "Legally, yes. However," Bones added quickly, seeing Evelyn's concern, "the healers at St. Mungo's have made it clear that while Black is making excellent progress, he is not yet medically cleared for full guardianship responsibilities. His own magical core was severely stressed by long-term Dementor exposure." "So nothing changes with our current arrangement?" "Not immediately, but the timeline may accelerate. Black has requested permission to visit Harry here, in your home, as part of his rehabilitation process. The healers believe controlled social interactions outside the hospital environment would benefit his recovery." Evelyn considered this carefully. "How would these visits affect Harry's treatment protocol?" "They shouldn't interfere at all. We're talking about perhaps one afternoon a week, supervised by both yourself and a mind healer from St. Mungo's." Bones's expression softened slightly. "He's desperate to build a relationship with his godson, Healer Clearwater. Their letters have apparently become the cornerstone of his recovery." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I think that could work, as long as we establish clear boundaries and ensure Harry isn't overwhelmed." She paused. "There's something else, isn't there? You could have sent this information by owl." Bones smiled grimly. "Perceptive? Yes, there are broader political implications. Dumbledore's position has been significantly weakened by these revelations. The fact that he, as chief warlock, allowed an innocent man to remain in Azkaban while placing the boy who lived with abusive muggles has created a perfect storm of public outrage. I imagine it would, Evelyn murmured. The progressive factions are using this to push for reforms in the DMLE and Wisengamot procedures. The conservatives are using it to question Dumbledore's fitness for his various positions of authority. And caught in the middle is a small boy who just wants to recover his health and find a family. Evelyn appreciated Bones's blunt assessment. What do you need from me? Continued discretion, primarily. Harry's medical condition remains confidential, but there is growing pressure for some kind of public statement about his well-being. Bones straightened her monocle. Additionally, I wanted to warn you that you may begin receiving correspondence from various quarters, political figures, journalists, even ordinary citizens concerned about the boy who lived. Our mail is already screened through St. Mungo's security protocols, Evelyn assured her. Excellent. One less thing to worry about. Bones rose to leave. I'll have my office send over the formal visitation schedule for Black once the healers finalize it. Likely beginning next week. As they moved toward the fireplace, Bones paused. Off the record, Healer Clearwater, how is he really? Not as a patient, but as a child who has been through an extraordinary ordeal. Evelyn considered her answer carefully. He's resilient in ways that break my heart. He expects so little and is grateful for basic kindness. But there's a light in him that all the neglect couldn't extinguish. A capacity for joy and trust that's gradually reawakening. Bones nodded, a rare softness crossing her usually stern features. Good. That's good to hear. She straightened her robes. Fudge is pushing to visit him before the Wisengamot summer session. I've denied the request for now, citing medical privacy, but be prepared for increased political interest as he recovers. After Bones departed, Evelyn found Harry still absorbed in his magical storybook, the animated illustrations dancing across the pages as the narration continued in soothing tones. She watched him for a moment from the doorway, struck by how quickly he had become the center of her world, this small, serious boy with his remarkable resilience and cautious curiosity. The prospect of Sirius Black's increased presence brought mixed emotions. She genuinely believed the man deserved to build a relationship with his godson, and Harry clearly responded positively to their correspondence. Yet a selfish part of her heart ached at the reminder that her role was temporary, a stepping stone in Harry's journey toward a permanent family. Was it about Sirius? Harry asked, looking up from his book with that uncanny perceptiveness. Yes, it was, Evelyn acknowledged, joining him on the window seat. How did you know? Harry shrugged. You look the same way the nurse did when I asked if I could stay at the hospital forever. A little sad but trying to hide it. Evelyn smiled despite herself. You're very observant, Harry. Yes, it was about Sirius. He's doing much better, and soon he'll be able to visit you here sometimes. Would you like that? Harry nodded, but studied her face carefully. Will you be sad if I go to live with him someday? The question, so direct and insightful from a 3-year-old, caught Evelyn off guard. I'll miss seeing you every day, she admitted honestly. But I'll be happy knowing you're with someone who loves you very much. And I hope we'll still be friends and see each other often. This seemed to satisfy Harry. I'd like that. You could visit and see my room at Sirius's house, like I see Sirius at the hospital now. That sounds perfect. Evelyn agreed, feeling a lump form in her throat. Now, shall we finish our dinner and write tonight's letter? You have exciting news to share about the feather. As they returned to the kitchen, Evelyn made a mental note to discuss this conversation with Harry's mind healer. His awareness of adult emotions and transitions suggested both remarkable emotional intelligence and the hypervigilance common in children from unstable environments. Like everything else about Harry Potter, it was both impressive and heartbreaking, another reminder of how much had been taken from him, and how much he deserved the chance to simply be a child. Sirius Black's first visit to Clearwater Cottage was scheduled for a Wednesday afternoon in early July, exactly 1 month after Harry had been released from St. Mungo's inpatient care. The morning dawned bright and clear, with Harry waking earlier than usual, his excitement manifesting in small bursts of accidental magic that caused his bedroom curtains to flutter despite the closed windows. "Remember, it's just for a few hours today," Evelyn reminded him gently as she helped him choose an outfit. "Sirius is still healing too, so the healers don't want him to get too tired." Harry nodded, carefully selecting a green shirt that Sirius had mentioned in a letter would bring out his eyes just like lilies. "Will we go to the garden? I want to show him the magic plants." "If the weather stays nice, absolutely." Evelyn had been integrating simple herbology into Harry's daily routine, teaching him to care for the magical plants that had practical healing properties. It had become one of his favorite activities, connecting with magic through growing things rather than wand movements or spells. The morning passed in a flurry of anticipation. Harry insisted on helping prepare lunch, carefully arranging sandwiches on plates and picking fresh strawberries from the garden. Evelyn observed his methodical approach with a mixture of pride and sadness, noting how his desire to please still manifested in perfectionism beyond his years. At precisely 1 o'clock, the FLA activated, and Sirius Black stepped through, accompanied by a cheerful witch in healer's robes who introduced herself as Healer Mara Jenkins, St. Mungo's mind-healing specialist. "Harry!" Sirius beamed, looking significantly healthier than he had at the hospital. The hollow gauntness had begun to recede from his face, and his hair, now clean and trimmed to shoulder length, framed features that hinted at his former handsomeness. "Look at you, standing up straight and looking so well!" Harry's shy smile bloomed into something brighter as Sirius crouched to his level rather than looming over him, a technique Evelyn had noticed the man consistently employed, instinctively understanding Harry's comfort with adult heights. "I made lunch," Harry announced proudly. "And I want to show you the garden where the glowing flowers are." "I can't wait to see it," Sirius replied with genuine enthusiasm. "Your letters about the magical plants have been so interesting. I'm hopeless with herbology myself. Your mother always said I had the black thumb of the Black family." The intended pun earned a giggle from Harry, who was gradually developing an appreciation for wordplay after years of humorless existence with the Dursleys. The visit unfolded with remarkable ease. After lunch, Harry led Sirius on a tour of the cottage garden, solemnly explaining the properties of each magical plant he had learned to tend. Sirius listened with exaggerated interest, asking questions that allowed Harry to demonstrate his growing knowledge. From the kitchen window, Evelyn observed them with Healer Jenkins, who made occasional notes on a charmed parchment. "They're bonding beautifully," Jenkins commented. "Black has exceptional instincts with Harry. Notice how he maintains appropriate physical distance until Harry initiates closer contact?" Indeed, Evelyn had noticed Sirius's careful approach to touch. He never grabbed or pulled Harry, instead offering a hand that the boy could choose to take or not. When Harry eventually slipped his small fingers into Sirius's palm to lead him to a particularly interesting moonflower, the man's expression of restrained joy spoke volumes. "How is Black's recovery progressing?" Evelyn asked quietly. Jenkins's expression grew more measured. "The physical damage from Azkaban is healing well. Magically, his core is stabilizing nicely, better than expected, actually. The psychological effects are more complex." "Nightmares?" "Yes, and some mood instability. Periods of intense grief alternating with anger. But his focus on Harry provides remarkable motivation." Jenkins watched the pair examining a flutter of magical butterflies near the herb garden. "In some ways, they're healing each other. Harry gives Sirius purpose beyond revenge, and Sirius gives Harry connection to his parents and a vision of family." The afternoon continued with a magical story read by Sirius, who animated the characters with subtle wandless magic that delighted Harry. They played a simplified version of Exploding Snap, carefully modified to prevent any startling noises that might trigger Harry's anxiety. Throughout it all, Evelyn noted Sirius's attentiveness to Harry's cues, noticing when the boy began to tire, when he needed space, when he was ready for more engagement. When the visit finally drew to a close, Harry's reaction surprised them all. "Can I show Sirius my magic exercise before he goes?" he asked Evelyn earnestly. "If you feel strong enough," She agreed, noting that it was nearly time for his daily strengthening potion. With solemn concentration, Harry sat cross-legged on the living room floor, motioning for Sirius to join him. Evelyn placed a feather between them, the same exercise they had been practicing for weeks, but with steadily increasing success. "Watch," Harry instructed, his small face setting in lines of intense focus. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the feather rose, not just twitching as it had initially, but actually levitating several inches above the carpet before settling gently back down. Sirius's genuine astonishment and delight couldn't have been feigned. "Harry! That's extraordinary wandless magic!" he exclaimed. "James couldn't do that until Hogwarts, and even then it took him weeks of practice." Harry's face lit with a combination of pride and relief that Evelyn recognized, the joy of not just succeeding at magic, but having that success celebrated rather than punished or feared. "Healer Evelyn says my core is getting stronger," Harry explained seriously. "It's at 40% now. And growing every day," Evelyn added, noting the slight fatigue in Harry's posture after the magical exertion. "Which reminds me, it's time for your strengthening potion." As Harry went with Evelyn to take his medicine, Sirius conferred quietly with Healer Jenkins. "He's doing wandless magic at 3. Sirius murmured, all evident in his voice. "Even with a depleted core. Children with significant magical trauma sometimes develop unusual pathways to their core," Jenkins explained. "The controlled exercises Healer Clearwater designed are helping him forge healthier connections. His natural magical potential appears to be remarkably high." When the time came for goodbyes, Harry surprised them again by initiating a quick hug with Sirius, the first physical affection he had offered anyone besides Evelyn since leaving the hospital. "Will you come back soon?" he asked, still pressed against Sirius's side. "Absolutely," Sirius promised, carefully returning the embrace with obvious emotion. "The healers say I can visit again next week. And we'll keep writing letters every day, right?" Harry nodded solemnly, extracting himself from the hug with the careful deliberation that characterized many of his interactions. After Sirius and Healer Jenkins departed through the floor, Evelyn found Harry standing thoughtfully by the fireplace. "That was a lovely visit," she commented, checking him for signs of magical or emotional exhaustion. "You must be tired after all that excitement." Harry nodded, but his expression remained contemplative. "Sirius feels like family," he said finally. "Like how I think family is supposed to feel." Evelyn knelt beside him. "What do you mean, Harry?" "He listens when I talk. And he likes when I do magic. And he tells me stories about my mom and dad." Harry looked at her with those startlingly perceptive green eyes. "And he looks at me like you do, like I'm not a burden." Fighting back tears, Evelyn drew him into a gentle embrace. "You have never been a burden, Harry. Not to me, not to Sirius, and never to your parents. You are a gift." As Harry relaxed against her, accepting comfort with the increasing ease of a child learning to trust, Evelyn silently reaffirmed her commitment to her temporary role. If the greatest gift she could give this extraordinary boy was a bridge to the family he deserved with his godfather, she would ensure that bridge was as strong and stable as possible. The next significant milestone in Harry's recovery came unexpectedly, during his weekly checkup at St. Mungo's in mid-July. Now a familiar figure in the pediatric healing ward, Harry greeted the staff by name as Evelyn led him to the examination room where Healer Chang waited to perform his core capacity assessment. "Good morning, Mr. Potter," Chang greeted with a warm smile. "Ready to see how your magic is growing today?" Harry nodded, climbing onto the examination table with practiced ease. "I made 3 feathers float yesterday," he informed the healer proudly. "At the same time." "Did you indeed? That's remarkable progress." Chang raised his wand to begin the diagnostic spells. "Let's see if that achievement shows in your core readings." The familiar colorful display materialized above Harry's chest, the swirling representation of his magical core that they had been monitoring weekly since his emergency admission 2 months earlier. But today, something was different. Where the colors had been gradually brightening with each assessment, Today they pulsed with unmistakable vitality. Chang's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Well, this is unexpected. He performed a more detailed diagnostic spell, studying the results with growing excitement. Mr. Potter, your core capacity has jumped to 53%, a 13-point increase in just 1 week. Evelyn moved closer, examining the readings with professional interest. That's unprecedented. The projected recovery curve suggested he wouldn't reach 50% for another 3 weeks. It appears Mr. Potter is defying expectations. Chang smiled at Harry. Have you been doing anything differently this week, young man? Harry considered the question seriously. I've been practicing in the garden with the plants. Making the leaves dance instead of feathers. Is that okay? More than okay, apparently, Chang replied. Connecting your magic to living things seems to be strengthening your core more effectively than our standard exercises. This development prompted a hastily arranged consultation with the team planning Harry's Horcrux extraction ritual. By that afternoon, Evelyn found herself in a conference room with Healer Blackwood, 2 unspeakables from the Department of Mysteries, introduced only as Croaker and Enigma, and surprisingly, Bill Weasley, a recently recruited Gringotts Cursebreaker whose expertise in Egyptian soul magic had proven unexpectedly valuable. 53% changes our approach significantly. Healer Blackwood began, reviewing Harry's latest scans. The ritual we designed for a 40% core would be unnecessarily conservative now. The Egyptian purification sequence could work at this capacity, Bill Weasley suggested, his youthful enthusiasm balanced by obvious expertise. It's less taxing on the patient's core because it uses external magic sources for the extraction phase. The containment challenges remain considerable, cautioned the unspeakable called Croaker, an elderly wizard with penetrating eyes. We're dealing with a soul fragment from one of the most powerful dark wizards in recent history. The goblin-forged receptacle should address that, his colleague Enigma countered. Combined with the binding runes Weasley suggested, it creates a one-way transfer path. Evelyn listened to the technical discussion with growing optimism. Harry's unexpected core strength had opened possibilities that might make the extraction safer and more complete. What's the revised timeline? She asked when the specialists had reached consensus on a modified approach. Healer Blackwood consulted her notes. If his core stabilizes at this new level, we could proceed in 3 weeks rather than waiting for the originally planned 2 months. And the success probability? This was Evelyn's primary concern. Each day the Horcrux remained, it posed risks to Harry's developing magical identity, but a failed extraction could cause catastrophic damage. The models suggest 92% success probability for complete extraction with the enhanced protocol, Croaker replied. Higher than our previous best estimate of 87%. After the meeting, Evelyn found Harry in the pediatric playroom, where he had been entertaining younger patients by making colored bubbles appear from his fingertips, another manifestation of his growing control over wandless magic. You've been working hard, she observed as they prepared to return home. The healers are very impressed with your progress. Harry looked up at her with those serious green eyes that could still catch her off guard with their intensity. Is the bad thing in my scar going to come out sooner now? Sometimes Evelyn forgot how perceptive he was, catching nuances of adult conversations and connecting them to his situation with remarkable clarity. Yes, she confirmed, seeing no reason to shelter him from information about his own healing. Because your magic is growing stronger faster than we expected, they think they can remove it in about 3 weeks. Harry nodded, absorbing this with his usual thoughtfulness. And after that, will my magic be normal? Like other wizard children? Your magic will be healthy, Evelyn answered carefully. But I don't think it will ever be quite normal, Harry. From what we've seen already, your magical abilities are quite special. This seemed to trouble him. I don't want to be special. I just want to be regular. Understanding dawned on Evelyn. After years of being treated as a freak by the Dursleys, Harry associated being different with being unwanted. The concept of being special in a positive way was still foreign to him. Being special doesn't mean being strange or wrong, she explained gently as they walked toward the hospital floor. It just means you have gifts that not everyone has. Sirius is special because he can transform into a dog. Your mother was special because she could create beautiful charms no one else could master. Being special can be wonderful, Harry. He considered this new perspective silently as they traveled home, his expression thoughtful. That evening, as they composed his daily letter to Sirius, Harry dictated something that brought tears to Evelyn's eyes. Dear Sirius. He began as usual, but then added, Healer Evelyn says being special can be good, not freakish. The healers say my magic is growing faster than they thought. Is that why my parents were special too? Was being special why they could fight the bad wizard? I think maybe I'm scared of being special still, but I'm trying not to be. As Evelyn transcribed his words, careful to maintain her professional composure, she marveled at the journey this remarkable child had begun, not just the healing of his magical core, but the reclamation of his identity as someone worthy of his gifts rather than burdened by them. The political fallout from Harry Potter's situation continued to ripple through magical Britain throughout July, though Evelyn largely shielded Harry from its effects. Daily Prophet headlines screamed about Dumbledore's deception, and boy who lived endangered by blood wards, while the Wisengamot conducted increasingly contentious hearings on the matter. Dumbledore himself maintained a dignified silence in public, cooperating fully with the inquiry while continuing to serve as Hogwarts headmaster. His positions as Supreme Mugwump and Chief Warlock had been temporarily suspended pending the investigation's outcome, a political compromise that satisfied neither his staunchest critics nor his most loyal supporters. Sirius Black's formal exoneration and the revelation of his wrongful imprisonment added fuel to the already blazing controversy. Barty Crouch Sr.'s career lay in ruins following his confession about suppressing evidence, and the Department of Magical Law Enforcement faced a top-to-bottom review of its emergency protocols from the war era. Through it all, in the peaceful sanctuary of Clearwater Cottage, Harry Potter's world expanded in ways both ordinary and magical. His weekly visits with Sirius became twice weekly, then thrice weekly as both godfather and godson thrived in each other's company. The mind healers reported significant progress for both patients, Sirius finding purpose beyond his trauma, and Harry building trust in a permanent family connection. He's asked me about living arrangements, Sirius confided to Evelyn during one visit, while Harry napped upstairs after an energetic morning of magical games. Specifically, whether he'll have a garden to practice plant magic when he comes to live with me. Evelyn smiled, unsurprised that Harry had begun planning for the transition. And what did you tell him? That I've purchased a cottage in Devon with extensive gardens and a view of the sea. Sirius's expression held a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The Black family properties were all too dark, too full of painful history. I wanted somewhere fresh, somewhere we could build new memories. That sounds perfect for him, Evelyn assured him. Harry connects deeply with growing things. I think it helps him visualize his own healing and growth. Sirius nodded thoughtfully. The mind healers say I should be cleared for full guardianship within a month, assuming no setbacks. That would coincide with the projected recovery period after his procedure. He still struggled to directly reference the Horcrux, the concept disturbing him on a visceral level. The timing seems appropriate, Evelyn agreed, ignoring the pang in her heart. Harry's core capacity reached 61% in yesterday's assessment. The extraction ritual is scheduled for August 12th, with a projected recovery period of approximately 3 weeks. I want to be there, Sirius said firmly. During the ritual, he should have someone he loves beside him. Evelyn hesitated. It will be difficult to witness, Sirius. The containment protocols alone are intimidating, let alone the ritual itself. I don't care. James and Lily would never forgive me if I left him to face this alone. Sirius's expression hardened with determination. I've already spoken to Healer Blackwood. As his legal guardian, I have the right to be present. And you think you can remain calm, for Harry's sake? Any emotional outburst could disrupt the magical fields. Sirius met her gaze steadily. I survived Azkaban for 2 years without losing my mind, Healer Clearwater. I think I can maintain composure for a 3-hour ritual to save my godson. There was something in his quiet certainty that reassured Evelyn. This was not the impulsive young man who had charged after Peter Pettigrew in a rage, but a man tempered by suffering and focused entirely on his godson's well-being. Then I'll support your presence, she decided. Harry responds well to you. Having you there may actually help stabilize him during the procedure. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of small feet on the stairs as Harry appeared, tousle-haired and sleep-warm. I heard talking, he explained, rubbing his eyes. Is it time for magic practice? Indeed it is, Prongslit. Sirius confirmed, using the nickname that had evolved from his stories about James Potter's animagus form. I thought today we might try something new, a little bit of magical music. Harry's eyes widened with interest. Like the singing teapot in the story? Even better, Sirius promised, drawing his wand. With a few careful movements, he conjured glowing strands of light that hung in the air like colorful strings. These are magic sound strands. When you touch them, they make different notes. For the next hour, Evelyn watched as Sirius patiently taught Harry to create simple melodies by touching the magical strands in sequence. The joy on Harry's face as he coaxed a recognizable tune from the magic was transcendent, pure childlike wonder untainted by fear or reservation. This, Evelyn realized, was the greatest gift Sirius Black offered his godson, not just family or security or connection to his parents, but the ability to find joy in magic without reservation or fear. It was healing of a kind no potion or spell could provide, and it confirmed for Evelyn that despite the pain of eventual separation, her temporary role in Harry's life was unfolding exactly as it should. August 12th dawned cool and overcast, as if the sky itself recognized the gravity of the day ahead. Harry had been admitted to St. Mungo's the previous evening for final preparations, a specialized cleansing potion to help separate his magical signature from the Horcrux, monitoring spells to establish baseline readings, and a carefully balanced sleeping draft to ensure he was well rested for the ordeal to come. Evelyn arrived at the hospital at dawn, finding Sirius already in Harry's room, sitting vigil beside the sleeping child. The man's usually animated face was solemn, his eyes shadowed with concern despite his attempts at a reassuring smile when she entered. He slept well, Sirius reported quietly. The night healer said his vital signs remained stable throughout. Evelyn nodded, reviewing the magical monitoring charts. His core readings are excellent, 65% capacity and perfectly stable. That's ideal for the procedure. He asked me last night if it would hurt. Sirius confided, his voice rough with emotion. I didn't know what to tell him. You told him the truth, I hope. Evelyn replied gently. That we'll use special magic to keep him comfortable, but that he might feel strange sensations as the dark magic leaves. Sirius nodded. He was so brave about it. Said it couldn't be worse than when Uncle Vernon. He broke off, jaw tightening with the anger that always surfaced when Harry's treatment at the Dursleys was mentioned. They sat in companionable silence for a time, both watching Harry's peaceful sleep. Despite the circumstances, there was something profoundly right about this moment. Two adults united in their commitment to a child's well-being, prepared to face whatever came with steady resolve. At precisely 8 o'clock, Healer Blackwood arrived with the extraction team, the two unspeakables, Bill Weasley, and 3 specialized ritual healers Evelyn recognized from the hospital's ancient magics division. It's time to wake him, Blackwood announced. We need to begin while his core is at its morning peak. Evelyn gently roused Harry, who woke with the immediate alertness that still spoke of his time with the Dursleys, where deep sleep had rarely been safe. Good morning, Harry, she said softly. Today is the day we remove the dark magic from your scar. Remember what we talked about? Harry nodded solemnly, his green eyes moving from her face to Sirius, seeking reassurance. You'll both stay with me? Right beside you the whole time, Sirius promised, taking Harry's small hand in his. And afterward we'll have ice cream with that special color-changing sauce you like. This earned a small smile from Harry, who allowed Evelyn to help him into the special white ritual robes that had been prepared. The simple garment, woven with protective runes and soaked in potions to facilitate magical cleansing, hung loosely on his still thin frame despite 2 months of proper nutrition. "You look like a proper little wizard," Sirius commented, conjuring a small mirror so Harry could see himself. Harry studied his reflection thoughtfully. "Will my scar go away when the dark magic is gone?" "Probably not completely," Evelyn answered honestly. "But it should fade significantly, and no longer cause you any problems." The ritual chamber had been prepared in St. Mungo's most secure wing, a circular room with walls of pure white stone, the floor inlaid with intricate runic patterns that glowed faintly blue in the muted light. In the center stood a raised platform surrounded by 7 golden pedestals, each bearing a different magical artifact selected for its purification properties. "This looks like something from your Egyptian tombs, Weasley," Croaker commented as they entered, his attempt at humor doing little to lighten the tense atmosphere. "Similar principles," Bill agreed, adjusting one of the artifacts, a scarab carved from lapis lazuli. "The ancient Egyptians understood soul magic better than most give them credit for." Harry approached the central platform with remarkable composure, holding tightly to both Evelyn and Sirius's hands. Only the slight trembling of his fingers betrayed his nervousness. "You're being so brave," Evelyn murmured as she helped him onto the platform, where a small, child-sized couch had been placed. "We'll be right here the whole time. Just like getting your core healing treatments," Sirius added encouragingly. "Except this time, when it's done, the dark thing will be gone for good." The ritual team took their positions around the chamber. Healer Blackwood approached with a small vial containing a pearlescent potion. "This will help you relax, Harry," she explained gently. "It won't make you sleep, but it will make everything feel a bit dreamy. Is that okay?" Harry nodded, accepting the potion with the practiced ease of a child who had become accustomed to medical interventions. As the liquid took effect, his rigid posture softened slightly, though his eyes remained alert, watching the preparations with intense curiosity. "The containment vessel is ready," announced the unspeakable called Enigma, indicating a small obsidian box inscribed with silver runes that sat on a separate pedestal across the room. "Primary wards activated." Bill Weasley completed a final check of the runic circle. "Extraction pathway is clear and stable. Purification artifacts are resonating correctly." Healer Blackwood turned to Evelyn and Sirius. "You may remain beside him, but once the ritual begins, you must not interfere or cross the inner circle, no matter what occurs. Do you understand?" Both nodded solemnly. "Harry," Blackwood addressed the boy directly, "you may feel strange sensations during the ritual, pressure, tingling, perhaps brief discomfort. If anything becomes too difficult to bear, tell us immediately, and we can pause the procedure. But it's very important that you try to remain still and calm. Can you do that?" "Yes, ma'am," Harry replied, his voice small but steady. With that, the ritual began. The team moved in coordinated precision, each member casting specific spells that wove together into a complex magical matrix. The runic circle illuminated fully, bathing the room in cool blue light, while the 7 purification artifacts began to pulse with their own distinct energies. Evelyn and Sirius positioned themselves on either side of Harry, each holding one of his hands. Through their medical training, Evelyn could perceive the layered magic building around them, healing energy intertwining with ancient protective spells, all focused on separating the foreign soul fragment from Harry's own magical signature. The first phase proceeded smoothly. Harry remained calm as waves of diagnostic magic washed over him, mapping the precise location and nature of the Horcrux. His scar began to glow with an unsettling greenish light as the dark magic was identified and isolated. "Phase 1 complete," Healer Blackwood announced. "Beginning containment construction." The second phase involved creating a magical pathway between Harry's scar and the obsidian box, a carefully controlled channel through which the soul fragment could be extracted without contaminating the surroundings. This was Bill Weasley's specialty, his wand movements creating intricate patterns in the air as he established the one-way transfer route. "Pathway stable," he confirmed after several tense minutes. "Ready for extraction on your mark." Healer Blackwood nodded to the unspeakables. Begin extraction sequence. This was the most critical and dangerous phase. As the team began the complex spellwork that would physically separate the soul fragment from Harry, the atmosphere in the chamber grew heavy with magical pressure. The air itself seemed to thicken, while the runes on the floor pulsed with increasing intensity. Harry's grip on Evelyn's hand tightened painfully as the extraction began in earnest. His scar, now brilliantly illuminated, seemed to writhe on his forehead like a living thing. "You're doing wonderfully," Evelyn murmured, maintaining her professional calm despite the disturbing sight. "Just a little longer." Sirius, true to his word, remained outwardly composed despite the whiteness of his knuckles as he held Harry's other hand. "We're right here, Prongslit. You're the bravest wizard I've ever known." The extraction reached its critical point. A tendril of oily black substance began to emerge from Harry's scar, following the established pathway toward the containment vessel. As it separated from his skin, Harry gasped, his body tensing. "Hurts," he whispered, tears springing to his eyes. "It's pulling." "Stabilize his core," Blackwood ordered sharply. One of the ritual healers adjusted her spell work, directing a stream of golden energy toward Harry's chest. The black substance continued to emerge, stretching like tar between the scar and the extraction pathway. Harry's breathing grew labored, his face pale with strain. "Core fluctuation detected," warned one of the monitoring healers. "Approaching critical threshold." Evelyn felt a surge of protective fear. "His core can't sustain this level of magical strain much longer. Accelerate final separation," Blackwood commanded. "Weasley, strengthen the extraction pull." Bill complied, his face tense with concentration as he modified the spell matrix. The black substance elongated further, stretching impossibly thin at its connection to Harry's scar. What happened next occurred in a matter of seconds, though it seemed to unfold in slow motion to those watching. The final connection between the Horcrux and Harry snapped with an audible crack. The freed soul fragment shot along the established pathway toward the containment vessel, its passage marked by a high, inhuman shriek that seemed to emanate from the substance itself. As the last of the blackness disappeared into the obsidian box, which sealed itself with a flash of silver light, Harry collapsed back onto the couch, unconscious. "Harry!" Sirius cried, panic breaking through his composed facade. "Core reading stabilizing," the monitoring healer reported quickly. "Vital signs returning to normal parameters." Evelyn was already casting her own diagnostic spells, relief washing over her as the results confirmed what the monitors showed. "He's all right," she assured Sirius. "His system is in shock from the magical separation, but there's no permanent damage. He's simply exhausted." Across the room, the Unspeakables secured the now sealed obsidian box within multiple layers of protective magic. The contained Horcrux would be transported to the Department of Mysteries for study and eventual destruction, far from Harry Potter and any chance of reattachment. "The extraction is complete and successful," Healer Blackwood announced formally. "Preliminary scans show no remnants of the foreign magical signature within the subject." As the ritual team began dismantling the complex magical apparatus, Evelyn and Sirius remained focused entirely on Harry. Color was already returning to his pale cheeks, and his breathing had settled into the deep rhythm of natural sleep. Most remarkably, his scar, the lightning bolt that had defined him since infancy, had already begun to fade from angry red to a more subdued pink. Without the dark magic sustaining it, it might eventually become little more than a faint silver line. "He did it," Sirius whispered, brushing a gentle hand over Harry's forehead. "My brave, incredible godson." "Yes, he did," Evelyn agreed softly. "And now his magic can truly begin to heal." As they prepared to move Harry to a recovery room, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment, from the critical day when a routine Muggle medical examination had revealed the dangerous drain on Harry's core to this culminating procedure that had finally freed him from the last physical connection to Voldemort. Whatever challenges still lay ahead, one truth was clear: Harry Potter had taken the most important step toward reclaiming his magical heritage and his future. Free from both the Dursleys' neglect and the parasitic presence in his scar, He could now grow into his potential with the love and support he should have had from the beginning. And watching Sirius Black's protective vigilance as they transferred the sleeping child to a recovery bed, Evelyn felt certain that Harry's new beginning would be everything his parents would have wished for their son. The weeks following the Horcrux extraction marked a period of remarkable transformation. Harry's recovery from the procedure exceeded all expectations. Within 3 days, he was awake and alert, his magical core readings showing unprecedented stability and growth. 72% capacity already, Healer Chang reported during Harry's follow-up appointment 1 week post-extraction. The removal of the parasitic element seems to have unleashed his natural magical development. At this rate, he'll reach normal capacity for his age within a month. But the most striking changes were less quantifiable. Harry's demeanor shifted subtly but significantly. The watchful wariness that had characterized him since his arrival at St. Mungo's gradually giving way to a more natural childlike curiosity and expressiveness. His smiles came more readily, his laughter less restrained. Even his posture changed, the defensive hunch of his shoulders relaxing into the straighter bearing of a child who no longer expected punishment for existing. "It's like he can finally breathe," Sirius observed during one of their now daily visits. They were watching Harry in the cottage garden, where he was conducting what he solemnly called magic experiments with the moonflowers, encouraging them to open during daylight through careful application of his wandless abilities. "In many ways he can," Evelyn agreed. "The Horcrux was affecting him in ways we couldn't fully measure, subtle influences on his emotions, his magical expression, even his physical comfort. Now that it's gone, he's truly himself for the first time." The transition planning continued apace. Sirius, formally cleared by the mind healers for guardianship responsibilities, completed the preparations on his Devon cottage, a charming stone house perched on a cliff overlooking the sea, with extensive gardens designed with Harry's plant magic in mind and security measures vetted by both Gringotts and the DMLE. "I've set up his room with a view of both the garden and the ocean," he told Evelyn during one planning session. "Remus helped choose books for his shelves, a mix of magical and Muggle children's literature. And there's plenty of space for you to visit whenever you wish." This last addition was Sirius's graceful acknowledgement of the bond that had formed between Harry and his healer, a relationship too significant to be severed simply because the medical necessity had ended. August gave way to September, bringing cooler air and the first hints of autumn color to the countryside. Harry's 4th birthday had been celebrated quietly at Clearwater Cottage, with Sirius, Remus Lupin, and a few of the St. Mungo's healers who had become important figures in his recovery. The modest gathering had delighted Harry, who had never experienced a proper birthday celebration before. "Will I go to Sirius's house soon?" Harry asked one evening as Evelyn tucked him into bed. The question held no anxiety, merely practical curiosity, a significant evolution from the child who had once feared any mention of change. "Yes, very soon," Evelyn confirmed, smoothing his perpetually unruly hair. "The healers say your magic is strong enough now for the final transition. We'll spend a few days visiting the new house together, and then, when you feel comfortable, you'll stay there with Sirius." Harry nodded thoughtfully. "And you'll still be my healer? For checkups and things?" "Absolutely," she assured him. "I'll visit regularly to monitor your progress, and you'll come to St. Mungo's for formal assessments once a month. We'll still see each other often." This seemed to satisfy him. "Sirius says there are magical plants at the new house that aren't even in your garden. And that the sea has magic too, different from garden magic." "That's true." Evelyn smiled. "The magic of the sea is ancient and powerful. I think you'll enjoy learning about it." As Harry drifted towards sleep, she reflected on how far they had come in just 3 months. The desperately ill child with the critically depleted magical core had transformed into a thriving young wizard whose capacity for joy and connection grew daily. Though the road ahead would still hold challenges, processing his early trauma, navigating his unavoidable celebrity in the magical world, eventually preparing for Hogwarts, Harry now had the foundation of health and love that would allow him to meet those challenges with strength. The final transition to Sirius's guardianship began the following weekend with an overnight visit to the Devon cottage. Evelyn accompanied Harry, both to monitor his magical response to the new environment and to ease the emotional transition. The house itself proved perfect for Harry's needs, spacious without being overwhelming, filled with natural light and thoughtful magical touches. Sirius had clearly considered every aspect of creating a home that would nurture both Harry's emotional security and his magical development. "This is your room, Prongslit," Sirius announced, opening a door on the cottage's upper floor. "What do you think?" Harry's expression as he entered the space was worth every galleon Sirius had spent. The room featured a bed beside wide windows overlooking the sea, shelves filled with books and magical toys, and most remarkably, a ceiling enchanted to display the night sky, complete with softly glowing stars that formed the constellations. "It's like magic," Harry breathed, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "It is magic," Sirius confirmed with a grin. "And it's all yours." The day unfolded in a series of explorations, the gardens with their exotic magical plants, the private cove below the cliff accessible by a winding stone staircase, the cozy library filled with books about magic and adventure. Throughout it all, Harry's natural curiosity blossomed, his questions growing more confident and his excitement more freely expressed. That evening, after Harry had fallen asleep in his new room, Evelyn and Sirius sat on the cottage's seaside terrace, sharing a quiet glass of wine as they discussed the day's success. "He's ready," Evelyn concluded, watching the moonlight dance across the waves below. "His magical readings have remained stable throughout the transition, and his emotional responses have been overwhelmingly positive. I think we can proceed with the final transfer of guardianship." Sirius nodded, his expression a complex mixture of joy and solemnity. "I keep thinking about James and Lily, what they would think of all this. How different things should have been." "They would be grateful," Evelyn said gently. "Their son is loved, protected, and thriving. His magic is healing, and his future is bright. Whatever path brought us here, the destination would make them proud." "Thank you," Sirius said suddenly, turning to face her directly. "Not just for your medical care, but for giving him what I couldn't during those first critical months. You became his first safe harbor, Evelyn. That bond will always be special." Touched by his generosity of spirit, Evelyn smiled. "He has room in his heart for both of us, Sirius. And I'll remain part of his life as long as he wants me there." "Always," Sirius confirmed without hesitation. "Your family now, whether you intended to be or not." Harry's healing created connections none of us expected. The formal guardianship transfer took place the following week in a private ceremony at the Ministry of Magic. Amelia Bones presided, her official demeanor softened by genuine warmth, as she completed the magical and legal processes that made Sirius Black Harry Potter's permanent guardian. "By the authority vested in me by the Wisengamot and the Department of Magical Law Enforcement," Bones concluded, "I hereby recognize and affirm the guardianship bond between Sirius Orion Black and Harry James Potter, with all rights, responsibilities, and protections thereof." A gentle pulse of golden magic sealed the declaration, flowing between Sirius and Harry like a visible manifestation of the commitment they had already formed in their hearts. As witnesses to the ceremony, Evelyn Clearwater and Remus Lupin added their magical signatures to the official record, creating additional layers of protection and connection for Harry's new family structure. "Congratulations, Mr. Potter," Bones said formally, though her eyes twinkled as she addressed Harry directly. "You have officially acquired a godfather, though I dare say he's been yours all along." Harry, dressed in new robes for the occasion, looked up at Sirius with a smile of pure contentment. "We're family now. Really family." "Really and truly, Prongslit," Sirius confirmed, kneeling to embrace his godson. "Forever and always." The aftermath of the ceremony included a small celebration at Sirius's cottage, where Harry proudly showed off his new home to the gathered well-wishers. Remus, now a frequent visitor and unofficially Harry's honorary uncle, had brought a magical atlas that showed detailed moving images of magical communities around the world, a gift that captured Harry's imagination immediately. Perhaps we'll visit some of these places someday, Sirius suggested as they pored over the pages together. A proper magical grand tour when you're a bit older. Can Healer Evelyn come too? Harry asked, glancing up at her. If she wishes. Sirius replied easily. She's welcome anytime, anywhere we go. As the evening drew to a close and guests began to depart, Evelyn prepared for her own farewell, not permanent, but significant nonetheless. Her official role as Harry's primary healer would transition to a monitoring position, with regular but less frequent contact. I'll see you next Tuesday for your checkup, she reminded Harry as she knelt to say goodbye. And anytime you need me in between, Sirius knows how to reach me immediately. Harry nodded seriously. I know. And I can write letters too, like I did with Sirius when he was still at the hospital. Exactly right. She smiled, opening her arms for a hug that Harry readily stepped into, another mark of his progress, this easy acceptance of affection that had once been so foreign to him. Thank you for making my magic better, he whispered against her shoulder. And for teaching me that being special isn't being freakish. Fighting sudden tears, Evelyn held him close for a moment. You did the hard work, Harry. I just helped a little along the way. As she prepared to flee back to her cottage, which would seem strangely quiet without Harry's presence, Sirius walked her to the fireplace. This isn't goodbye, he reminded her gently. Just a new chapter. I know, Evelyn smiled. And it's exactly as it should be. He belongs with you, Sirius. He always did. But he needed you first. Sirius countered. And he still does, in a different way. We both do. He handed her a small wrapped package. A token of appreciation from both of us. Open it when you get home. Later that evening, alone in her cottage for the first time in months, Evelyn unwrapped the gift with careful fingers. Inside the package was a delicate silver bracelet, each link inscribed with tiny runes of healing and connection. But it was the accompanying note, written in Sirius's elegant handwriting with a childish scrawl added at the bottom, that brought tears to her eyes. To the healer who saved not one, but two broken wizards, our magic will always recognize yours as family. With endless gratitude, Sirius and Harry, I wrote my name myself. Beneath Harry's proudly printed signature was a small, carefully drawn lightning bolt, not the angry red scar it had once been, but a symbol reclaimed and transformed, just like the child himself. Evelyn slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, feeling the gentle pulse of the magic embedded within it, a permanent connection to the extraordinary journey that had begun with an unexpected diagnosis and culminated in a family reborn from the ashes of tragedy. Outside her window, the luminous lilies in her garden glowed softly in the gathering darkness, a reminder that even in absence, some connections continue to flourish and grow. 4 years later, healer Evelyn Clearwater stood on platform 9 3/4, watching the organized chaos of families bidding farewell to children departing on the Hogwarts Express. Though she had no child of her own boarding the train, her presence had been specifically requested by an 8-year-old wizard who insisted on seeing off his honorary cousin. Do you think Neville packed the plant care book I gave him? Harry Potter asked anxiously, standing between his godfather and Evelyn as they watched Augusta Longbottom fussing over her grandson near the train. I'm quite certain he did, Evelyn assured him. Neville takes his herbology very seriously. Harry nodded, satisfied with this assessment. His friendship with Neville Longbottom had developed naturally after Sirius had reached out to Augusta, recognizing the parallel loss both boys had suffered. Over the past 3 years, the initially shy Neville had blossomed under Harry's encouraging influence, discovering his own magical strengths through their shared love of plants and growing things. He'll write every week, Sirius reminded Harry. And before you know it, you'll be joining him there. At 8 years old, Harry Potter bore little resemblance to the traumatized 3-year-old Evelyn had first treated. Tall for his age and robustly healthy, with his father's unruly hair and his mother's vivid green eyes, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a child who knew he was loved and valued. His magical development had exceeded all expectations. Once freed from both the parasitic drain of the blood wards and the corrupting influence of the Horcrux, his natural magical abilities had flourished. By age 6, he could perform controlled wandless magic that many adult wizards struggled to master, and his intuitive understanding of magical theory had prompted Sirius to arrange specialized tutoring to challenge his growing skills. Yet, for all his extraordinary magical progress, what struck Evelyn most powerfully was how normal Harry had become in other ways. A happy, occasionally mischievous child who collected chocolate frog cards, played modified Quidditch in the garden with Sirius and Remus, and complained about practicing his handwriting. The heavy weight of being the boy who lived had been largely kept from him through a combination of protective privacy spells around the Devon cottage and careful management of his limited public appearances. Though he understood the basic facts of his parents' murder and his own inadvertent defeat of Voldemort, these historical events remained abstract concepts rather than defining features of his identity. "There's Neville," Harry pointed out as the Longbottom boy finally boarded the train, waving nervously from a window. Harry waved back enthusiastically. "I hope he gets Hufflepuff like he wants. He'd be happy there. Any house would be lucky to have him." Sirius replied diplomatically, though Evelyn noticed his lips twitching with amusement at his godson's partisan house preferences. Unlike James Potter's firm Gryffindor allegiance, Harry had developed a fascination with Hufflepuff after learning that his mother had nearly been sorted there. "Loyalty and hard work are the most important things," he had declared solemnly after reading Hogwarts, a history. "And they're near the kitchens." The train whistle blew, signaling imminent departure. As the scarlet engine began to move, Harry watched with mixed emotions, excitement for Neville's adventure and anticipation of his own future journey, tempered by the natural impatience of a child who still had 3 years to wait. 3 years isn't so long," Evelyn commented as they turned to leave the platform. "Especially when they're filled with so much learning and growth." "I know," Harry sighed dramatically. "But Sirius says I already know more magic than some first years. Couldn't I go a little early?" "Not a chance, Prongslit." Sirius laughed, ruffling his godson's perpetually messy hair. "I'm keeping you all to myself as long as possible. Besides, we have that trip to the magical preserves in Romania scheduled for spring, remember?" This reminder effectively banished Harry's impatience. The planned educational journey to visit magical creature sanctuaries had been his primary obsession for months. As they exited through the magical barrier back into the Muggle portion of King's Cross Station, Evelyn reflected on the extraordinary journey they had all taken since that pivotal day when a Muggle doctor's concern had accidentally revealed the magical crisis threatening Harry's life. The political aftermath had eventually settled, with Dumbledore retaining his position as Hogwarts headmaster while permanently relinquishing his roles in the Wizengamot and International Confederation. His relationship with Harry remained complex, acknowledged as an important figure in the wizarding world and his parents' former mentor, but kept at a respectful distance by Sirius, who had neither forgotten nor fully forgiven the Blood Ward decision. The wider wizarding world had gradually adjusted to the revised narrative of Harry Potter's early life, though periodic attempts by journalists to gain access to "the boy who really lived" continued to be firmly rebuffed by the formidable legal team Sirius had assembled to protect Harry's privacy. "Lunch at the Leaky Cauldron before we head home?" Sirius suggested as they reached the station exit. "I believe Tom mentioned having treacle tart on today's menu when I spoke to him yesterday." "Yes, please," Harry agreed enthusiastically. For years with Sirius had introduced him to the simple pleasures of magical dining, with the Leaky Cauldron's treacle tart ranking among his favorite treats. "Will you join us, Evelyn?" Sirius asked, though he already knew her answer. These monthly outings had become tradition following Harry's regular magical checkups at St. Mungo's. "Wouldn't miss it," she confirmed, smiling as Harry slipped his hand into hers with the easy affection he now showed to the adults in his life. As they made their way through Muggle London toward the hidden wizarding pub, Evelyn found herself profoundly grateful for the unexpected path that had brought them all together. What had begun as a medical emergency, a depleted magical cord discovered by chance, had evolved into something far more meaningful, a family forged through healing, bound by love rather than obligation. and walking between Sirius Black and Evelyn Clearwater, chattering excitedly about Romanian dragons and Neville's probable Hogwarts adventures, Harry Potter moved confidently toward a future bright with possibilities, his magic strong, his heart whole, his legacy reclaimed not as the boy who lived, but simply as himself, Harry, just Harry, exactly as he was always meant to be. Chapter 3: Legacy Reclaimed. Concentrate, Harry. Feel the magic in your fingertips before you try to direct it. 8-year-old Harry Potter stood in the center of his godfather's study, face scrunched in concentration as he extended his hands toward the row of feathers arranged on the antique desk. 4 years had transformed him from the malnourished, magic-starved child rescued from the Dursleys into a healthy, vibrant young wizard whose power continued to surprise even those who knew him best. "I'm trying something different this time," Harry muttered, his emerald eyes narrowing behind round glasses that framed a face increasingly reminiscent of his father's. The lightning bolt scar on his forehead had faded to a silvery line, barely visible unless one knew to look for it. Sirius Black leaned against a bookshelf, arms crossed casually as he observed his godson's practice. At 32, he had finally reclaimed the handsome features that Azkaban had stolen, though silver threaded prematurely through his dark hair, permanent reminders of his time with the Dementors. "Different how?" he asked, curious. Harry's approach to magic had always fascinated him, intuitive in ways that defied conventional teaching. Instead of answering, Harry closed his eyes. The air in the study seemed to still, as if the room itself held its breath in anticipation. Then, with a subtle gesture that was more intention than movement, Harry's magic unfurled. All 5 feathers rose simultaneously, but instead of simply hovering as the exercise typically required, they began to dance in a complex pattern, weaving around one another in a miniature aerial ballet. Most remarkably, each feather glowed with a different color: red, blue, green, yellow, and purple, the hues pulsing in harmony with their movement. "Merlin's beard," Sirius whispered, straightening in astonishment. This was far beyond the controlled wandless magic they'd been practicing. Harry maintained the display for nearly a minute before carefully lowering the feathers back to the desk. As the last one settled, he released a deep breath and turned to his godfather with a cautious smile. "I've been practicing that at night sometimes. The color part was tricky to figure out." Sirius crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled Harry into a proud embrace. "That was extraordinary magic, Prongslit. Most adult wizards couldn't manage that level of simultaneous control, let alone add magical colorization." Harry's smile widened at the praise, his initial hesitancy melting away. "I got the idea from that book on magical theory Professor Flitwick sent. The one about intent influencing magical manifestation. Phileas will be thrilled when I tell him you've already applied his research." Sirius chuckled, ruffling Harry's perpetually messy hair. "He's been predicting you'll revolutionize charm work at Hogwarts." The mention of Hogwarts brought a gleam of anticipation to Harry's eyes. Though still 3 years from attendance, the magical school featured prominently in his thoughts, a milestone that represented both his heritage and his future. "Do you think I'm ahead of where my parents were at my age?" Harry asked, trying to sound casual though Sirius easily recognized the deeper question beneath. "Am I making them proud?" "Your mother was experimenting with potion modifications by age 9, and your father had already figured out how to temporarily animate his toy soldiers," Sirius replied thoughtfully. "But neither of them could perform controlled wandless magic like you just demonstrated. Your circumstances have been different, Harry, both the challenges and the opportunities." Harry nodded, absorbing this perspective as he always did when Sirius shared insights about James and Lily. Though he'd grown up surrounded by stories of his parents, the hunger to know them, to measure himself against their legacy while forging his own, remained a constant undercurrent in his development. "All right, enough magical theory for today," Sirius declared, checking his watch. "Mooney's bringing Neville over in half an hour for your herbology project, and you still need to prepare the greenhouse." Harry's expression brightened at the reminder. "I almost forgot. We're transplanting the singing snapdragons today." He hurried toward the door before pausing to look back at his godfather. "Are you still taking us to Diagon Alley tomorrow?" "Of course. Sirius confirmed. Flourish and Blot's got that rare botanical encyclopedia you've been pestering me about, and Neville deserves a reward for his outstanding in Professor Sprout's correspondence course. With a grin of anticipation, Harry darted from the room, his footsteps echoing down the hallway of Windward Cottage, the seaside home that had been his sanctuary for the past 5 years. Sirius watched him go, a complex mixture of pride and wistfulness crossing his features. Moments like these, Harry's casual display of extraordinary magic, his easy excitement about shared activities with friends, were precious reminders of how far they'd come from those dark early days after his rescue from the Dursleys. Moving to the window, Sirius gazed out at the garden where Harry was now setting up workstations in the enchanted greenhouse. The extensive grounds of Windward Cottage had been transformed over the years to accommodate Harry's evolving interests. The greenhouse for his plant magic experiments, a warded practice area for more volatile spellwork, a modified Quidditch pitch where he could practice flying without risking exposure to Muggle eyes. All of it designed to nurture the remarkable young wizard Harry was becoming while keeping him safely beyond the reach of both those who would worship him as a celebrity, and those who might still wish him harm. The familiar crack of apparition announced Remus Lupin's arrival with Neville Longbottom. Sirius smiled as Harry raced across the lawn to greet them, his godson's laughter carrying on the sea breeze. These were the moments James and Lily had been robbed of witnessing, but Sirius witnessed them for them, cherishing each milestone as both a gift and a responsibility. "We're doing right by him, Prongs," he murmured to the absent friend who remained ever present in his heart. "He's going to change the whole bloody world someday, just you watch. Exactly 7 drops of Dittany essence, Harry. Not 6, not 8. Magical numbers matter in healing potions." Healer Evelyn Clearwater watched as Harry carefully counted droplets from a crystal vial into the simmering cauldron between them. At 36, Evelyn retained the calm competence that had helped save Harry's life 5 years earlier, though her role had evolved from primary healer to trusted mentor and honorary family member. "Like that?" Harry asked, setting the vial aside and peering at the potion, which had turned a perfect pearlescent blue. "Precisely," Evelyn confirmed, noting his technique in a leather-bound journal where she documented their monthly lessons. "Now we let it simmer for exactly 7 minutes before adding the powdered unicorn horn." These private healing lessons had begun 2 years earlier when Harry had expressed interest in understanding the potions and spells that had restored his damaged magical core. What started as simple curiosity had developed into serious study, revealing an aptitude for healing magic that complemented his natural wandless abilities. "I've been practicing the diagnostic charm you taught me last time," Harry mentioned as they waited. "I can see Sirius's old Quidditch injury now. It shows up as a yellow spot on his shoulder." Evelyn raised an impressed eyebrow. "You've managed to refine your magical perception to distinguish between acute and chronic injuries? That's advanced work, Harry." He shrugged with the self-consciousness that sometimes emerged when his unusual magical progress was highlighted. "It's easier with people I know well. I tried with Neville when he fell in the garden last week, but I could only see a general glow around his scraped knee, not the detailed layers like with Sirius." "That's still remarkable progress," Evelyn assured him, adding notes to her journal. "Magical perception is typically taught in the final year of healer training. Most adult wizards never develop the sensitivity you're describing." The timer chimed softly, interrupting their conversation. With practiced precision, Harry added 3 precisely measured spoonfuls of powdered unicorn horn to the cauldron, stirring clockwise as the potion shifted from blue to a luminous silver. "Perfect," Evelyn pronounced after examining the final result. "This wound-cleaning potion is hospital quality, Harry. You have your mother's touch with precise brewing." Pride bloomed across Harry's face at the comparison to Lily Potter. Though he treasured all stories about his parents, references to shared talents, or traits held special significance, tangible connections to the people he could remember only through photographs and others' memories. As they bottled the potion for the cottage's healing supplies, Evelyn conducted her monthly assessment of Harry's magical core, a ritual that had continued long after the medical necessity had passed, providing continuity and reassurance for a child whose earliest memories included the terror of magical depletion. 115% capacity for your age bracket, she reported, studying the glowing diagnostic image hovering above Harry's heart. Stable, balanced, and beautifully integrated. You wouldn't know this core had ever been damaged. What about the scar connection? Harry asked quietly, his hand unconsciously rising to his forehead where the faded lightning bolt remained. Not a trace of foreign magic, Evelyn confirmed, as she had every month since the Horcrux extraction. Just your own unique magical signature, as healthy as I've ever seen it. Relief flickered across Harry's face, another constant in these monthly checkups. Though he rarely spoke of it directly, Evelyn knew the memory of the dark thing in his scar occasionally haunted his dreams, a shadowy reminder of the connection to Voldemort that had nearly claimed his magic and his life. Now, she continued briskly, changing the subject as she always did after these confirmations. Tell me about your studies this month. Sirius mentioned you've begun elemental magic theory? Harry brightened immediately. Professor McGonagall recommended it after she saw my transfiguration progress. I'm starting with water manipulation since we live by the ocean. He glanced toward the windows where afternoon sunlight glinted off the sea beyond the cottage. It's harder than air currents, but more interesting. Their conversation flowed easily as Harry described his educational progress across various magical disciplines. Unlike most wizarding children who received minimal magical instruction before Hogwarts, Harry's unusual circumstances had prompted a comprehensive home education program, combining traditional wizarding subjects with specialized training tailored to his unique abilities. Before I forget, Evelyn said as they cleaned the workstation, I brought something you might find interesting. She retrieved a thin volume from her bag, handing it to Harry. It's a rare copy of Intuitive Approaches to Healing Magic by Helga Hufflepuff herself. The hospital archives had a duplicate, and the chief healer thought you might appreciate it. Harry accepted the book reverently, his fingers tracing the ancient leather binding. Hufflepuff wrote healing texts? I thought she was mainly known for her charms work. She was a remarkably versatile witch, Evelyn explained. This particular work focuses on wandless healing techniques that draw on the natural magic within plants and elements, rather similar to your approach, actually. Harry's eyes lit with excitement as he carefully opened the book to examine its contents. The parallels between his intuitive magical style and historical approaches had become a source of fascination as he sought to understand his own unusual abilities within the broader context of magical theory. Their lesson concluded with tea in the cottage's sunroom, where Sirius joined them for Evelyn's monthly report on Harry's progress. These meetings had evolved from formal medical consultations into comfortable family discussions, with Harry participating fully rather than being spoken about as a patient. His control continues to exceed expectations, Evelyn explained, summarizing her observations. Particularly in areas requiring fine magical manipulation, like the healing potions we worked on today. He demonstrated some impressive wandless work this morning as well, Sirius added with undisguised pride. Multi-object levitation with simultaneous color transformation. Harry squirmed slightly under the praise, though Evelyn noted the pleased flush on his cheeks. Unlike the frightened 3-year-old who had flinched from attention, Harry had developed a healthy relationship with recognition, appreciating genuine praise while remaining refreshingly uninterested in the fame attached to his name in the wider wizarding world. I've been thinking, Harry interjected, setting down his teacup. Would it be possible to visit St. Mungo sometime? Not for a checkup, but to see the children's ward? I've been reading about magical games that can help with core stabilization during healing, and I thought maybe. He trailed off, suddenly uncertain, but Evelyn understood immediately. You want to share some of what helped you with children currently undergoing magical healing? Harry nodded. I remember how boring it was sometimes, and how scary. I thought maybe if someone who'd gotten better came to visit, it might help them feel less worried. The simple compassion of the request touched Evelyn deeply. This, perhaps more than his extraordinary magical abilities, was the true measure of Harry Potter's development, his instinctive empathy for others, particularly those facing challenges he understood firsthand. I think that could be arranged, she said carefully, exchanging a glance with Sirius. We need to consider privacy and security, of course, but the healing value for those children would be significant. We'll work out the details, Sirius promised, resting a hand on Harry's shoulder. It's a brilliant idea, Prongslet. As their conversation shifted to planning this potential visit, Evelyn observed the interaction between Godfather and Godson with quiet satisfaction. The bond between them had deepened into something remarkable, a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than merely duty or circumstance. When she eventually departed through the Flynn network, returning to her own cottage where another young healing student awaited lessons, Evelyn carried with her the continued certainty that despite its unconventional beginnings, Harry Potter's childhood had become exactly what it should be, a foundation of love, learning, and purpose that would shape not just his future, but potentially the future of magical healing itself. Remember, maintain eye contact but don't stare. Firm handshake, but not challenging. And if anyone asks inappropriate questions about the Dursleys, my scar, or that night, I say I'm afraid that's private and look to you or Madame Bones. Harry finished, adjusting his formal robes as he stood before the mirror in his bedroom. We've practiced this 100 times, Sirius. Sirius sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture Harry recognized as his godfather's nervous habit. I know. I just want this to go smoothly. Your first official public appearance is significant, politically speaking. It's just a ministry children's benefit, Harry pointed out reasonably. And I'm only giving out prizes for the junior potions competition. Madame Bones said most people won't even know I'm attending until I walk on stage. The annual ministry summer benefit had become a tradition in the years following Voldemort's defeat, raising funds for magical orphans and children affected by the war. This year's event included a children's potions competition judged by Hogwarts Professor Slughorn, who had recently returned from retirement. Amelia Bones had suggested Harry's participation as a carefully controlled introduction to public life, limited in scope but symbolically meaningful. You're right, Sirius acknowledged, making a visible effort to relax. And we've taken every security precaution. Moony will be nearby the entire time. Amelia has personally vetted the guest list, and will portkey directly in and out. Harry nodded, understanding his godfather's concern while finding it slightly amusing. After years of privacy protections that had kept him largely sheltered from his celebrity status, this modest public debut represented a calculated step toward preparing him for the inevitable attention he would face at Hogwarts and beyond. How do I look? He asked, turning from the mirror to face Sirius directly. The formal robes were a deep forest green that complemented his eyes, with subtle embroidery at the collar and cuffs, elegant without being ostentatious. His perpetually unruly hair had been tamed as much as possible, and the new glasses Sirius had commissioned from a magical optician in France gave his face a more mature appearance. Like your father attending his first ministry function, Sirius said softly, his expression momentarily distant with memory. James would be strutting around adjusting his cuffs and practicing his most charming smile. Lily would be reminding him not to run his hand through his hair every 5 seconds. Harry smiled at the familiar comparison, though it carried a bittersweet edge. As he grew older, resembling James more with each passing year, these moments of recognition seemed to both please and pain Sirius in equal measure. Would they be nervous about this? Harry asked, genuinely curious. About me being seen publicly as the boy who lived? Sirius considered the question seriously, as he always did when Harry sought insight into his parents' potential feelings. Your mother would be concerned about the pressure and expectations others might place on you. Your father would probably be torn between pride and protectiveness. He smiled ruefully. Rather like I'm feeling right now, actually. A soft knock at the door announced Remus Lupin's arrival. The portkey activates in 5 minutes, he reminded them, leaning against the doorframe. At 33, the werewolf's prematurely lined face and silver-streaked hair contrasted with the warmth in his amber eyes as he surveyed his honorary nephew. You look very distinguished, Harry. Thanks, Uncle Moony. The title had evolved naturally over the years as Remus's role in Harry's life solidified into something between favorite teacher and secondary guardian. Though he maintained his own cottage on the property's edge, Remus was a daily presence in Harry's education and upbringing. Nervous? Remus inquired gently. Harry considered the question honestly. A little. Not about meeting people, but about disappointing them somehow. Everyone has ideas about what the boy who lived should be like. And that's precisely why we've waited until now for any public appearance. Sirius said firmly. You've had time to develop your own sense of identity before facing those expectations. Just remember, you don't owe anyone a performance. Remus added. You're attending as Harry Potter, presenting awards to young potioneers, not as some legendary figure from history books. Harry nodded, grateful for their understanding. The distinction between his actual self and his public image had been a recurring theme in their conversations as he grew old enough to understand the unusual circumstances of his fame. The golden portkey, a small decorative key emblazoned with the ministry's seal, began to glow on Harry's desk, signaling its imminent activation. Time to go, Sirius announced, his voice shifting to what Harry privately called his Lord Blacktone, the aristocratic bearing that emerged when formal occasions required it. Remember, we arrive in Minister Bagnald's private antechamber, not the main event hall. Harry and Remus each placed a finger on the portkey alongside Sirius. The familiar but unpleasant sensation of being hooked behind the navel and whirled through space seized them, depositing the trio moments later in an elegantly appointed office within the Ministry of Magic. Minister Millicent Bagnald rose from behind her desk to greet them, her silver-streaked dark hair arranged in an elegant coiffure. Lord Black, Mr. Lupin, and young Mr. Potter. Right on schedule. Her shrewd eyes assessed Harry with interest. Thank you for agreeing to participate in today's benefit, Mr. Potter. The children will be thrilled. Harry executed the formal half-bow Sirius had taught him for greeting government officials. Thank you for inviting me, Minister Bagnald. I'm honored to present the awards. Excellent manners, the minister approved, turning to Sirius. You've done well with him, Lord Black. Quite a contrast to what might have been, given the alternatives. The oblique reference to Dumbledore's thwarted guardianship plans hung briefly in the air before Sirius smoothly redirected the conversation. Harry has been looking forward to seeing the potions competition. I understand this year's entries were particularly innovative? Indeed. Bagnald confirmed, moving toward a side door. Horace hasn't stopped raving about a color-changing wound salve created by a Miss Granger, a muggle-born who hasn't even started Hogwarts yet. Quite extraordinary. As they followed the minister through a private corridor that would lead to the event hall, Harry mentally reviewed the briefing materials Remus had prepared. The children's potions competition included 3 age categories, with participants from magical primary schools and home education programs across Britain. His role was straightforward: present the awards, offer brief congratulations, and pose for a few photographs for the Prophets Society pages. The real purpose, of course, was more complex, a carefully orchestrated reintroduction of Harry Potter to the wizarding public after years of speculation and rumor following his removal from the Dursleys' care. The political ramifications of that event had eventually settled into a new equilibrium, with Dumbledore retaining his position at Hogwarts while ceding much of his former political influence. Now, as Harry approached his 9th birthday, Sirius and his advisors had determined it was time to begin establishing his public identity on their terms, rather than allowing others to control the narrative. Amelia is waiting just inside, Minister Bagnald informed them as they reached a nondescript door. She'll escort you to your seats. You'll be called to the stage after Professor Slughorn announces the winners. Madame Bones greeted them with her characteristic efficiency, her monocle glinting in the light of the corridor. Everything is in order, she assured Sirius. The press has been restricted to 2 approved photographers, and all attendees have passed security screening. Harry followed the adults into the event hall, momentarily dazzled by the transformation of what normally served as a ministry conference space. Floating golden lights illuminated elegantly decorated round tables surrounding a central stage area. Display tables along the walls showcased the children's potions entries, each labeled with the creator's name and age category. Despite the precautions taken to minimize attention, Harry's entrance did not go unnoticed. A ripple of whispers spread through the assembled guests, heads turning subtly or not so subtly to glimpse the boy who lived making his first public appearance. Chin up, shoulders back. Sirius murmured beside him. Just like we practiced. Harry straightened, adopting the poised demeanor they had rehearsed. The whispering intensified as they followed Madame Bones to a table near the stage where several ministry officials and their families were already seated. May I present Lord Sirius Black and his ward, Mr. Harry Potter? Madame Bones announced formally to the table's occupants. As well as Mr. Remus Lupin, educational consultant to the Black family. The introductions proceeded smoothly, though Harry noted the barely concealed curiosity in the eyes of each person who shook his hand. He recognized several names from his political awareness lessons with Remus, department heads, Wisengamot members, and their assorted family connections. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Potter, said a portly wizard introduced as Cornelius Fudge, junior minister in the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes. We've all been most curious about your progress since the unfortunate incident with your previous guardians. Harry maintained his pleasant expression while mentally noting the inappropriate reference to the Dirsleys. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Fudge. I've been fortunate to receive excellent care and education. Sirius smoothly interjected before Fudge could pry further. Harry has developed quite an interest in potions, which makes today's competition particularly meaningful for him. The conversation shifted to safer topics as the event formally began. Minister Bagnall delivered a brief welcome speech highlighting the benefit's charitable purpose before introducing Professor Slughorn, who approached the stage with theatrical enthusiasm. What a delight to see such promising young talent, the portly professor exclaimed, beaming at the audience. Our competitors have demonstrated remarkable creativity and technical skill across all age categories. Harry listened with genuine interest as Slughorn described the competition entries, from simple healing salves created by the youngest participants to complex transformative potions from those approaching Hogwarts age. And now, to present our awards, we are honored to welcome a young wizard who represents the bright future of magical Britain, Mr. Harry Potter. The applause that erupted as Harry rose from his seat had an intensity that momentarily startled him. Following Sirius's encouraging nod, he made his way to the stage, where Slughorn awaited with an almost reverential expression. Mr. Potter. Such an honor, my dear boy. The professor gushed, pumping Harry's hand enthusiastically. Your mother was one of my most brilliant students, you know. I always told her she had an intuitive understanding of potion interactions that couldn't be taught. Thank you, Professor, Harry replied, warming to the genuine admiration in Slughorn's voice when he mentioned Lily. I'd love to hear more about her work sometime. Oh, the stories I could tell! Slughorn beamed. But we mustn't keep our young champions waiting. If you'll do the honors? Harry turned to face the audience, momentarily daunted by the sea of faces all fixed on him with undisguised fascination. Then his gaze fell on the front rows where the young competitors sat, their expressions ranging from nervous to excited. Among them, a bushy-haired girl with rather large front teeth practically vibrated with anticipation, while a red-headed boy nearby seemed torn between hope and resignation. These children, Harry realized, weren't seeing the boy who lived. They were watching a slightly older kid who would announce whether their hard work had earned recognition. The perspective shift calmed his nerves instantly. Congratulations to all the competitors, he began, his voice clear and confident. Creating potions requires patience, precision, and creativity, qualities that will serve you well in all magical endeavors. The award presentation proceeded smoothly. Harry presented certificates and small golden cauldron trophies to the winners in each category, offering specific praise based on the notes Slughorn discreetly provided. The bushy-haired girl, Hermione Granger, did indeed win her category for the color-changing moon salve, blushing furiously as Harry congratulated her on her innovative approach. The judges were particularly impressed by your integration of Muggle color theory with traditional magical properties, he told her as he presented her trophy, reciting Slughorn's notes, but adding his own genuine interest. How did you come up with the idea? I read about chromotherapy in my parents' medical journals, she replied earnestly, speaking rapidly in her excitement. They're dentists, you see, and I thought if colors can influence healing in the Muggle world, they might enhance magical healing too, especially for children who respond well to visual stimulation during treatment. Harry blinked, impressed by both her reasoning and her confidence in explaining it. That's brilliant thinking, he said sincerely. Connecting different types of knowledge often leads to the most interesting magical innovations. The girl beamed at him as if he'd given her a second trophy, and Harry found himself returning her smile before moving on to the next category. When the presentations concluded, Slughorn guided Harry through the display area to examine the winning entries more closely, with the press photographers capturing carefully composed images for the following day's profit. Though initially stiff under the scrutiny of the cameras, Harry gradually relaxed as he engaged with the young potioneers about their work. You handled that beautifully, Sirius murmured as they finally made their way toward the exit after completing the official portion of the event. Natural and genuine, just like we discussed. Harry nodded, though his attention was caught by the bushy-haired girl who had been animatedly discussing her potion with an elegantly dressed blonde woman near the refreshment table. Something about her reminded him of himself at that age. The intense focus, the evident love of learning, the slight outsider quality that came from approaching magic from an unconventional perspective. Could I have a moment? He asked Sirius, nodding discreetly toward the girl. Sirius followed his gaze, understanding immediately. Of course. I'll be right here with Mooney. Harry approached the girl, who was now alone as the blonde woman had moved to speak with another parent. Miss Granger? I wanted to ask you something about your potion that I didn't get to earlier. Her eyes widened in surprise. Yes, of course. What would you like to know? I'm curious about how you tested the different color variations. Did you have a systematic approach? The question unleashed a torrent of enthusiastic explanation about controlled experiments, variables, and documentation methods that confirmed Harry's initial impression of a methodical mind passionate about both learning and sharing knowledge. And then I realized that the purple variation worked particularly well for bruising, while the blue was better for cuts. She concluded breathlessly. I'm hoping to expand the research when I get to Hogwarts. Professor Slughorn said the school has resources for more advanced experimentation. That sounds fascinating, Harry said sincerely. You've applied really thoughtful analysis to something most magical researchers might overlook. She blushed again but looked pleased. Thank you. It's my first magical competition. My parents were worried it might be too advanced since I've only known about magic for 2 years, but my primary tutor encouraged me to try. I'm glad you did, Harry replied. The magical world needs fresh perspectives. That's how progress happens. The girl's parents approached then, introducing themselves as Drs. Granger with evident pride in their daughter's achievement. Harry exchanged pleasantries with them briefly before rejoining Sirius and Remus for their departure. Making friends already? Remus asked with a knowing smile as they made their way back to the private portkey chamber. Maybe, Harry said thoughtfully. She's brilliant but in an interesting way, not just memorizing facts but making new connections. She'll be in my year at Hogwarts. The Muggle-born girl with the innovative approach to healing potions. Sirius noted. I can see why you'd find common ground there. Harry nodded, though his thoughts were already turning to the implications of their brief interaction. Until today, his social circle had been limited to a carefully vetted group of children from allied families. Neville Longbottom, Susan Bones, occasionally the Weasley children when their families' political differences could be set aside. Meeting Hermione Granger had offered a glimpse of the broader connections awaiting him at Hogwarts. As they prepared to activate the return portkey, Harry reflected on the afternoon's experiences. His first public appearance had gone as smoothly as they could have hoped, establishing a foundation for his gradual integration into Wizarding society on his own terms. Yet it was the smaller interactions, the genuine connection over potions theory with Hermione Granger, the momentary solidarity with the nervous competitors, even Slughorn's personal memories of his mother, that resonated most deeply as they returned to the sanctuary of Windward Cottage. Later that evening, As Harry prepared for bed, Sirius appeared in his doorway with a rolled newspaper in hand. "Special evening edition of the Prophet," he explained, unrolling it to reveal the headline, "Potter Heir makes Poi's public debut at Ministry Benefit." The accompanying photograph showed Harry presenting an award to Hermione Granger, both children smiling genuinely as they discussed her potion. The caption read, "Harry Potter, survivor of the tragic attack that ended the war, celebrates academic achievement with fellow rising magical talent Hermione Granger." "Not bad," Sirius assessed. "Focused on your actual activities rather than sensationalizing your history or appearance." Amelia's influence with the editor paid off. Harry studied the image thoughtfully. "It's strange seeing myself like this. As a public figure, I mean. Like I'm two different people, just Harry at home, and Harry Potter in the newspaper. That duality is something you'll need to navigate as you grow older," Sirius acknowledged, sitting on the edge of Harry's bed. "But remember what we've always emphasized. The public Harry Potter is a role you sometimes play, not who you truly are. Like your Lord Black persona," Harry observed shrewdly. Sirius chuckled. "Exactly. A necessary social face that serves its purpose without defining me." He set the newspaper aside. "How are you feeling about today, overall?" Harry considered the question carefully. "Good, I think. It wasn't as overwhelming as I expected. And it was nice meeting other kids interested in magical theory, especially Hermione. Making connections based on shared interests rather than your celebrity status is exactly what we hoped for." Sirius nodded approvingly. "Though I suspect young Miss Granger might be a bit starstruck despite your best efforts." Harry groaned. "I hope not. She seemed too sensible for that." "Time will tell," Sirius replied with amusement. "Now get some rest. Madame Marchbanks is coming tomorrow to assess your transfiguration progress, and you know how thorough she can be." After Sirius departed, Harry lay awake for some time, his thoughts returning to the children he'd met at the benefit. Until today, his exceptional magical education and unusual upbringing had seemed normal, the only reality he could clearly remember. Seeing other young wizards and witches preparing for Hogwarts in different ways had offered a new perspective on his own circumstances. The realization that his experiences were not just different but potentially advantageous brought with it a sense of responsibility. The magical knowledge and control he developed through years of specialized training represented a privilege not available to most children, even those from established wizarding families. As sleep finally claimed him, Harry made a quiet resolution to himself. When he eventually reached Hogwarts, he would find ways to share what he had learned rather than setting himself apart. His parents' legacy, as Sirius often reminded him, wasn't just about power or survival. It was about making the magical world better for everyone within it. Focus on the surface tension, Harry. Water resists separation until enough force is applied, then it divides and reforms based on its natural cohesion. Remus Lupin stood at the edge of the small pond in Windward Cottage's gardens, observing as Harry extended his hands toward the water's surface. It was a warm August afternoon, the kind that invited lazy relaxation rather than intense magical practice. Yet Harry had insisted on continuing his elemental magic lessons despite the temptation of flying or swimming instead. At 9 years old, his dedication to magical study occasionally concerned both Sirius and Remus, who worried about balancing his exceptional education with normal childhood experiences. Yet Harry approached magic not as a burdensome duty but as a fascinating puzzle to be explored, an attitude that made intervention seem unnecessary. Now, with his brow furrowed in concentration, Harry slowly raised his hands. The pond's surface bulged upward, following his movement until a perfect sphere of water the size of a quaffle hovered before him, suspended by his magic alone. "Excellent," Remus approved. "Now for the challenging part. Separate the sphere into distinct components while maintaining control of each." Harry's eyes narrowed, his fingers spreading in a delicate gesture. The floating water sphere trembled, then gradually divided into 3 smaller spheres, each rotating slowly in place. "Color them," Remus suggested, pushing his student further. "Like you did with the feathers." With a slight smile of concentration, Harry infused each water sphere with a different hue, one blue, one green, one red. The colored spheres began to orbit one another in a complex pattern, occasionally merging and separating again with perfect control. Remarkable, Remus murmured, noting the minimal magical exertion Harry displayed despite the complexity of the manipulation. Your affinity for elemental magic is developing beautifully. After maintaining the display for several minutes, Harry carefully returned the water to the pond, releasing his breath in a controlled exhalation as the last ripples faded from the surface. It's getting easier, he commented, reaching for the glass of lemonade Remus had thoughtfully prepared. Water feels different from air, more responsive to intention, less to direct force. That's an insightful observation, Remus replied, making notes in the enchanted journal where he tracked Harry's magical progress. Each element has its own magical character. Fire demands respect, earth requires patience, air seeks freedom, and water adapts to its container while retaining its essential nature. They moved to the shade of a large oak tree where a picnic blanket and lunch awaited them, a common practice during Harry's outdoor lessons. As they ate, Remus reviewed the upcoming educational schedule, which included an international component for the first time. Sirius has confirmed our visit to France next month, he informed Harry. Madame Maxime has agreed to give us a private tour of Beaux Vitans, and Nicholas Flamel has invited us to his estate for an afternoon of alchemical discussion. Harry's eyes lit with excitement. Really? Flamel himself? Sirius didn't mention that part. It was only confirmed this morning, Remus explained, smiling at his enthusiasm. Apparently, Professor Dumbledore mentioned your interest in elemental transmutation, and Flamel expressed curiosity about your approach. The mention of Dumbledore brought a complexity to Harry's expression that Remus had come to recognize over the years. The Hogwarts headmaster occupied a unique position in Harry's life, neither trusted mentor nor outright adversary, but something more nuanced. After the revelations about the Blood Wards and Harry's subsequent recovery, Dumbledore had maintained a respectful distance while occasionally facilitating educational opportunities through his extensive network. Will Professor Dumbledore be at the Flamel meeting? Harry asked carefully. No, Remus assured him. He simply made the introduction, knowing your interest in the subject. The meeting will be just us, Sirius, and the Flamels. Harry nodded, visibly relaxing. Though he had developed a diplomatic approach to interactions with Dumbledore during the infrequent occasions when they crossed paths, such meetings always carried an undercurrent of tension that Sirius preferred to minimize. Their peaceful lunch was interrupted by the distinctive crack of apparition. Moments later, Sirius appeared around the side of the cottage, his expression unusually serious as he approached their picnic spot. Lesson going well? He inquired, though Remus immediately noticed his attention was divided. Just finished water manipulation, Remus replied, studying his friend with concern. Harry managed triple sphere separation with color infusion. What's happened? Sirius glanced at Harry, clearly weighing how much to share in his presence. Ministry news, he said finally. Several families were attacked last night, the Abbotts, the Diggories, and the Boneses. Dark mark above each house. Remus stiffened, while Harry's eyes widened in alarm. Is Susan all right? Harry asked immediately, thinking of his friend who lived with her Aunt Amelia. Yes, they weren't home, Sirius assured him. In fact, no one was seriously injured in any of the attacks. It appears the perpetrators struck empty houses or were driven off quickly when residents were present. But the symbolism is concerning. Death Eaters? Remus asked quietly, the term heavy with dark memories. Unknown, Sirius replied. Could be actual former Death Eaters testing the waters, or could be someone using their methods to create fear. Either way, the DMLE is on high alert, and Amelia has asked us to review our security protocols. Harry set down his sandwich, appetite forgotten. Does this have anything to do with me? With him? He rarely spoke directly of Voldemort, though his education had included age-appropriate information about the Dark Wizard's reign of terror and his parents' roles in opposing him. Sirius moved to sit beside Harry, his expression softening. There's no evidence of that, Prongslet. This could be isolated incidents or politically motivated intimidation unrelated to past conflicts. But we're taking it seriously nonetheless. Should we cancel the France trip? Remus asked pragmatically. No need for that yet, Sirius replied. International travel might actually be safer under the circumstances. But we'll add additional security measures and keep our plans confidential. The remainder of lunch passed with subdued conversation as Sirius reviewed specific security enhancements for Windward Cottage. While the property already boasted extensive protections, including Fidelius, anti-apparition wards, and blood-keyed access charms, Sirius described additional measures being implemented that afternoon. Creature will be increasing the perimeter scanning frequency, he explained, referencing the elderly house elf who had transferred his loyalty from the Black family to Harry specifically after meeting the child. And Bill Weasley is coming to add some specialized Egyptian warding that should detect any dark mark signatures. Harry listened attentively, asking practical questions that reflected his understanding of magical security concepts. While Sirius had always been careful to shield him from unnecessary fear, he had never hidden the reality that Harry's history made him a potential target for those who had supported Voldemort. Can I help? Harry asked finally. With the warding, I mean. Sirius and Remus exchanged glances, considering the request. Harry's participation in establishing the cottage's protections had evolved over the years from simple observation to active contribution, particularly in areas involving his unique magical sensitivity. Actually, Sirius said thoughtfully, your connection to the property's ambient magic might be useful for the integration phase. Bill mentioned needing a resonance anchor for the new perimeter alarms. After you complete your homework, Remus added with a pointed look. You still have that runic translation for Professor Babbling to finish before tomorrow's lesson. Harry nodded, accepting the condition without protest. His structured education included contributions from various experts in magical disciplines, some who visited Windward Cottage regularly, others who provided correspondence lessons evaluated remotely. As they cleared away the remains of lunch, Harry's thoughts visibly turned inward, processing the implications of the attacks. Sirius, noticing his preoccupation, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Try not to worry too much, he advised gently. We've prepared for contingencies like this since the beginning. You're safe, and we'll make sure you stay that way. Harry nodded, but his expression remained serious. It's not just about me though, is it? If Death Eaters are becoming active again, lots of people could be in danger. The mature perspective struck both Sirius and Remus forcefully, another reminder that despite their best efforts to provide a normal childhood, Harry's awareness of the wider wizarding world and its conflicts had been shaped by his unique position within it. That's true, Sirius acknowledged, honesty having always been his policy with Harry. But remember that the Ministry is much better prepared now than during the First War. Amelia has completely restructured the Aura Department, and the international cooperation agreements mean reinforcements can arrive quickly if needed. This seemed to reassure Harry somewhat, and he headed inside to complete his homework with a final thoughtful glance toward the property boundaries where the new wards would soon be established. Once Harry was out of earshot, Remus turned to Sirius with a questioning look. You're downplaying this. How serious is the situation really? Sirius's expression hardened. Amelia's concerned. 3 coordinated attacks in one night, all targeting families with connections to either the Order of the Phoenix or prominent anti-Voldemort positions during the war. It's not random. And the timing? Just as Harry begins making public appearances. Could be coincidence, could be reaction. Sirius admitted. Either way, we're accelerating certain contingency plans. The international properties are being prepared for potential evacuation, and I've contacted our allies in the ICW about emergency portkey authorizations. Remus nodded grimly. Years of living with the constant awareness of threats to Harry had created a well-established protocol for escalating security measures without alarming the boy himself. What does Dumbledore say? He asked, knowing that despite their complicated relationship, Sirius would have sought the headmaster's perspective on any serious Death Eater activity. That's the strangest part. Sirius replied, lowering his voice further. He seemed unsurprised, almost as if he'd been expecting something like this to happen eventually. He mentioned disturbing patterns and certain magical signatures being monitored since the war ended. You think he knows more than he's sharing? Don't I always? Sirius's expression was wry. But in this case, I believe he's genuinely concerned about Harry's safety. He's offered additional protective resources from the Order network if needed. Their conversation was interrupted by Bill Weasley's arrival. The young Cursebreaker, now sporting a dragon fawn earring and the deep tan of someone who spent significant time in desert climates, greeted them warmly before setting to work on the enhanced ward schema. As predicted, Harry's assistance proved valuable during the integration phase of the new protections. His natural sensitivity to magical currents allowed him to identify optimal anchoring points for the dark mark detection wards, impressing Bill with his intuitive understanding of complex magical interactions. You've got a gift for feeling magic's architecture, Bill commented as they completed the final adjustments. That's rare, especially in someone your age. Most wizards never develop that level of sensitivity. Harry shrugged modestly, though Sirius noted the pleased flush on his cheeks. It's easier with familiar magic. Windward has been home for a long time now. The comment, casual as it was, struck Sirius forcefully. For Harry, the cottage by the sea represented security and belonging, concepts that had been entirely absent during his early years with the Dursleys. The thought that emerging threats might disrupt this hard-won stability filled Sirius with fierce determination to prevent any such disruption. That evening, after Harry had gone to bed, Sirius, Remus, and Bill convened in the cottage's secure study to discuss broader security implications. The attacks bear similarities to early Death Eater tactics from the First War, Bill explained, spreading out intelligence reports Amelia Bones had provided. Precise targeting, coordinated timing, but relatively limited damage, more warning than warfare. Testing defenses, Remus suggested grimly. Gauging response times and protective measures before launching more serious attacks. That's Moody's assessment as well, Sirius confirmed. The question is whether this represents a genuine Death Eater resurgence, or someone adopting their methods for different purposes. Bill leaned forward, his expression unusually serious. There's another possibility we need to consider. During my work with the Egyptian Magical Archives, I've been researching soul magic. Partly because of Harry's case, partly for Gringotts' security applications. Sirius tensed visibly. The Horcrux extraction from Harry's scar remained a sensitive topic, discussed only when absolutely necessary. What about it? The ancient text describes certain echoes that can persist after a soul fragment is separated from its host. Not the fragment itself, but a kind of magical resonance that can theoretically be detected by those connected to the original soul. You're suggesting these attacks could be related to Voldemort's remaining Horcruxes? Remus asked sharply, connecting the implications. Bill nodded grimly. It's a theory Dumbledore and I have been exploring. If Voldemort created multiple Horcruxes, as the headmaster suspects, they might be responding to Harry's increasing magical signature as he grows stronger. Or to the public re-emergence of the boy who lived. Silence fell as the three men contemplated this disturbing possibility. The unspeakables had confirmed the object extracted from Harry's scar was indeed a Horcrux, a deliberate or accidental fragment of Voldemort's soul embedded at the moment of his apparent destruction. But the implications of multiple such objects had remained largely theoretical until now. Does Harry need to know about this? Remus finally asked, voicing the question foremost in Sirius's mind. Sirius ran a hand through his hair, his expression troubled. Not the details, not yet. He knows the basics about Horcruxes from the extraction ritual explanations, but we've always framed it as a resolved issue. I don't want him carrying the weight of Voldemort's potential return at 9 years old. I agree, Bill said. The information isn't actionable for him at this point. The adults in magical law enforcement and research are handling the investigation. Harry's priority should be continuing his development and education. With appropriate security awareness, Remus added pragmatically. enough to ensure his cooperation with protective measures without creating undue anxiety. The discussion continued late into the night, addressing contingency plans and communication protocols should the situation escalate further. When Bill finally departed, Sirius found himself making a final patrol of the cottage, checking on Harry before he could consider sleeping himself. The boy slept peacefully, his expression relaxed in ways that still occasionally surprised Sirius after all these years. The contrast between the traumatized 3-year-old rescued from the Dursleys and this confident, thriving 9-year-old remained one of the most profound validations of the path they had chosen. "We'll keep you safe," Sirius whispered, adjusting the blanket that had slipped from Harry's shoulder. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Unknown to Sirius, Harry's dreams that night were filled with unusually vivid images: a graveyard shrouded in mist, a golden cup pulsing with ominous light, and a high, cold laugh that seemed to echo from a distant past or a possible future. But by morning, the dreams had faded to vague impressions, overshadowed by excitement about the coming trip to France and the promise of meeting the legendary Nicholas Flamel. Beauxbatons Academy of Magic gleamed like a palace of light in the autumn sunshine, its crystal towers and elegant gardens presenting a stark contrast to the Gothic grandeur Harry had seen in pictures of Hogwarts. As Madame Maxime, the impressively tall headmistress, guided their small group through the school's expansive grounds, Harry found himself constantly comparing the two institutions that represented such different approaches to magical education. "Our philosophy emphasizes harmony between magical disciplines," Madame Maxime explained in her rich, accented English. "Where Hogwarts separates subjects distinctly, we encourage students to explore the connections between them, how transfiguration principles enhance potion making, how arithmancy underpins complex charms." "That aligns well with Harry's educational approach," Sirius commented, exchanging a meaningful glance with Remus. "We've found that his magical development benefits from seeing the relationships between traditional categories." The headmistress nodded approvingly, her dark eyes assessing Harry with undisguised interest. "Monsieur Flamel mentioned similar observations. He is quite looking forward to your visit tomorrow." Their tour continued through sunlit classrooms where students practiced elegant wand work, specialized laboratories where older pupils conducted complex magical experiments, and finally, the extraordinary gardens where magical plants from across the world grew in carefully maintained ecosystems. "This is incredible," Harry breathed, kneeling beside a cluster of luminous silver flowers that seemed to sing softly when he approached. "We have nothing like these at home." "Lunar harmonies," the herbology professor accompanying them explained. "They respond to magical signatures, each person drawing forth a different melody." "Yours is quite complex, young man." Harry listened, fascinated by the delicate interplay of notes that emerged as he carefully extended his magical awareness toward the plants. Unlike the straightforward responses he typically received from magical flora at home, these seemed to be engaging in an actual dialogue with his magic, responding not just to his presence but to his intentional magical communication. "May I?" he asked, glancing at the professor for permission before attempting a more direct interaction. At the professor's nod, Harry closed his eyes, focusing on the techniques Neville had taught him for communicating with sensitive magical plants. Gradually, he extended tendrils of his magic, not to control or manipulate the flowers, but to offer connection. The silver blossoms trembled, then expanded, their songs shifting to a more complex harmony as they responded to his invitation. Several began to sway in patterns that matched the magical pulses he was sending, creating a synchronized dance between wizard and flora that drew surprised murmurs from the adults observing. "Extraordinary sensitivity," the professor commented to Sirius. "Has he studied botanical empathy formally?" "Self-taught, with some guidance from a friend with natural herbology talent," Sirius replied, watching proudly as Harry continued the delicate magical exchange. "He's always had an affinity for living magic." When Harry finally withdrew his magical connection, the flowers seemed to bow toward him before returning to their normal state. He rose, slightly flushed with the effort of maintaining such precise magical control, but visibly pleased with the interaction. "They're like nothing I've ever encountered," he told Remus excitedly as they continued the tour. It wasn't just responding to magic, they were actually communicating, sharing information about the garden's ecosystem and how they help maintain magical balance here. Beaux Vitons has always emphasized the intelligence inherent in magical entities, Remus explained. Where British magical education often focuses on control and utilization, the French approach includes more reciprocal relationships with magic itself. This philosophical difference became increasingly apparent as they observed classes throughout the day. Where Hogwarts teaching, based on Sirius and Remus's descriptions, emphasized mastery over magical forces, Beaux Vitons students learned to engage with magic as a collaborative partner rather than a tool to be wielded. It's almost like they're having conversations with their magic, Harry observed during lunch in the school's elegant dining pavilion. Even their wand movements look more like, I don't know, conducting music rather than directing spells. An apt analogy. Madame Maxime approved, having joined them for the meal. We believe that magic responds most powerfully to those who respect its nature rather than imposing their will upon it. This philosophy seems aligned with your own approach, Monsieur Potter, from what I have observed today. Harry considered this thoughtfully. His unconventional magical education had never explicitly framed itself in these terms, yet he recognized the underlying similarity. Particularly in his wandless work, he had always achieved better results when working with his magic's natural tendencies rather than forcing specific outcomes. Is that why wandless magic is more common here? He asked, having noticed several older students performing minor wandless feats during their tour. Indeed, the headmistress confirmed. Approximately 30% of our graduates maintain some wandless capability, compared to perhaps 5% at Hogwarts. The wand is a wonderful tool for directing and amplifying magic, but it can also create dependency if relied upon exclusively from the beginning of training. The conversation shifted to the differences in curriculum between the schools, with Remus asking detailed questions about integration of magical theory across subjects. Harry listened attentively while observing the students around them, noting the graceful confidence with which they conducted both magic and social interactions. Would you consider attending Beaux Vitons when the time comes, Harry? Madame Maxime asked directly as dessert was served. We would be honored to welcome you, and I believe our approach might complement your natural abilities. The question, though expected given the purpose of their visit, still caught Harry by surprise. Despite his awareness of international magical education options, Hogwarts had always featured prominently in his imagined future, the school where his parents had studied, where their friends had formed lifelong bonds, and where most British magical children established their place in wizarding society. It's something to consider seriously. Sirius interjected smoothly, noting Harry's momentary hesitation. We're exploring all options to find the best educational fit for Harry's unique circumstances. The diplomatic response satisfied Madame Maxime, and the conversation continued pleasantly through the remainder of lunch. As they prepared to depart for their accommodations in the nearby magical village, the headmistress presented Harry with a beautifully bound book on Beauxbaton's approach to elemental magic. Perhaps this will provide useful perspectives for your meeting with Monsieur Flamel tomorrow, she suggested with a knowing smile. He has always appreciated fresh approaches to ancient magical principles. That evening, settled in their comfortable suite at the Enchanted Inn that catered to international magical visitors, Harry pored over the book while Sirius and Remus discussed the day's observations. Their approach to magical education certainly offers advantages, Remus noted, reviewing his detailed notes from the tour. Particularly for someone with Harry's natural wandless abilities and integrative learning style. Sirius nodded thoughtfully. The security considerations are significant as well. Beauxbaton's international student body means Harry wouldn't stand out as dramatically as he might at Hogwarts. And the French magical government has fewer historic connections to Death Eater sympathizers. Harry glanced up from his reading, aware they were discussing his future but respecting their thorough analysis. The decision about his magical education had always been presented as a family matter to be determined based on multiple factors: academic fit, security considerations, and personal preference all weighted equally. What did you think of the school, Harry? Sirius asked, noticing his attention. Beyond the impressive architecture and gardens, I mean. Could you see yourself studying there? Harry considered the question carefully. I like their approach to magic, treating it as a collaboration rather than just a tool. And their integration of subjects makes sense to me. He hesitated briefly. But it doesn't feel like home, the way I always imagined Hogwarts would. Sirius and Remus exchanged knowing glances. Despite their best efforts to present international options objectively, they had always suspected Harry's emotional connection to Hogwarts, the place where his parents had met, where the Marauders had formed, where his British magical heritage was rooted, would ultimately influence his preference. We still have time before any final decisions must be made, Remus assured him. Tomorrow's meeting with Flamel may offer additional perspectives to consider. Harry nodded, returning to his book with renewed focus. The chapters on elemental magic alignment particularly captured his interest, offering theoretical frameworks that explained some of his intuitive approaches to wandless manipulation. By the time he retired to bed, his mind was filled with questions he hoped to explore with the legendary alchemist the following day. Morning found them traveling by enchanted carriage to the Flamel estate, a journey that carried them through hidden magical valleys invisible to Muggle eyes, where ancient standing stones pulsed with power that Harry could feel even through the carriage walls. The ley line convergence is particularly strong in this region, Remus explained, noting Harry's fascination with the magical landscape. It's one reason Flamel chose this location for his home centuries ago. The ambient magic supports his alchemical work. The estate itself appeared suddenly around a bend in the road, a sprawling medieval structure that somehow managed to feel both anciently permanent and vibrantly alive. Gardens of extraordinary magical plants surrounded the stone buildings, while the air itself seemed charged with subtle energy that made Harry's skin tingle pleasantly. "Welcome to Chateau Flamel," called a surprisingly youthful voice as they approached the entrance. A man who appeared perhaps 60, though they knew him to be over 600 years old, stood in the doorway, his keen eyes immediately finding Harry among the visitors. "And especially welcome to you, young Mr. Potter. I've been looking forward to our meeting." Nicholas Flamel greeted each of them warmly before leading them into a sunlit study filled with ancient texts, mysterious instruments, and comfortable furniture that invited scholarly conversation. His wife Perenelle, appearing similarly youthful despite her centuries of life, joined them with refreshments that shimmered with subtle magic. "Albus speaks highly of your intuitive approach to elemental magic," Flamel began once they were settled. "He mentioned particularly your work with simultaneous manipulation of multiple elements, a rare capability even among accomplished alchemists." Harry felt a flutter of nervousness at being discussed by such legendary figures, but the genuine interest in Flamel's expression put him at ease. "I've been working with water and air combinations recently," he explained, "trying to understand how they interact when guided by different magical intentions." "Fascinating." Flamel leaned forward eagerly. "Would you be willing to demonstrate? Perhaps something you've been exploring recently?" After a reassuring nod from Sirius, Harry stood and moved to an open area of the study. Centering himself with a few deep breaths, he extended his hands and called forth his magic with practiced precision. From a decorative fountain in the corner, a stream of water rose and formed a perfect sphere hovering before him. Simultaneously, he gathered air currents around the water, creating a swirling vortex that supported and shaped the liquid. With careful concentration, he began to manipulate the combination, the water sphere elongating into a cylindrical form, while the air currents formed helical patterns around and through it. Most impressively, he maintained perfect separation between the elements while allowing them to influence each other's movement and structure. The demonstration culminated with the water forming the shape of a phoenix in flight, supported by air currents that created the impression of flame surrounding the liquid bird. When Harry finally released the magic, allowing the water to return gracefully to the fountain, a moment of stunned silence filled the room. "Extraordinary," Flamel breathed, his eyes alight with scholarly excitement. "Not just control, but genuine understanding of elemental sympathies. You perceived how the water's natural flow could be enhanced rather than constrained by the air currents. It's like they want to work together if you find the right patterns." Harry explained, slightly flushed from the exertion and praise. Each element has its own, I don't know, personality almost? But they can harmonize if you listen to what they're trying to do naturally. Perenelle Flammel exchanged a significant glance with her husband. That perspective aligns with ancient alchemical principles that have been largely forgotten in modern magical education. She noted, the recognition of elemental intelligence rather than mere responsiveness. What followed was several hours of fascinating discussion about magical theory, with Harry answering questions about his intuitive approach while the Flammels offered historical context and advanced theoretical frameworks that explained his experiences. Sirius and Remus contributed occasionally but mostly observed the extraordinary exchange between the centuries-old alchemist and the 9-year-old boy whose magical perceptions seemed to transcend conventional understanding. Your approach reminds me of discussions I had with a young Albus Dumbledore, Flammel commented as their meeting drew to a close. He too had remarkable intuitive insights about magical relationships, though his perspective was more analytical than empathic. Your natural tendency to collaborate with magic rather than command it is particularly refreshing. Harry absorbed this comparison thoughtfully. His relationship with Dumbledore remained complicated, acknowledging the man's extraordinary magical knowledge while maintaining emotional distance due to the Blood Ward incident. Hearing that the legendary wizard had shown similar magical intuition created an unexpected sense of connection. Before you depart, Flammel said, rising from his chair, I have something that might interest you, Mr. Potter. Something that belongs to your family's legacy, in a manner of speaking. He crossed to an ancient cabinet and removed a small wooden box carved with symbols Harry recognized as alchemical notations. Your ancestor, Ignotus Peverell, was a friend and occasional collaborator of mine many centuries ago. This contains notes from our shared research on the permanence of magical imprints, what some might call the magic of the soul. Sirius straightened, suddenly alert. Peverell? You're certain of the connection to the Potter line? Absolutely. Flammel confirmed. The genealogical magic confirms it. James Potter was a direct descendant of Ignotus Peverell through the paternal line, a fact that takes on particular significance given young Harry's survival of the killing curse. He handed the box to Harry, who accepted it with reverent care. These notes might offer insights that connect to your unique magical circumstances. I believe you're now old enough to begin exploring that deeper heritage, particularly given the exceptional magical sensitivity you've demonstrated today. The gift stunned all three visitors. For Harry, whose knowledge of his family history had been limited primarily to his parents and grandparents, the connection to an ancient magical researcher who had worked with Nicholas Flamel himself represented an unexpected expansion of his understanding of his magical heritage. Thank you, he said sincerely, his fingers tracing the alchemical symbols on the box. I'll study it carefully. I believe you will, Flamel replied with a knowing smile. And perhaps, when you've had time to explore its contents, we might correspond about your observations. Fresh perspectives on ancient knowledge often yield the most interesting revelations. As they prepared to depart, Perenelle Flammel approached Harry with one final observation. Your magical signature carries echoes of both your mother's intuitive brilliance and your father's creative power, she told him quietly. But its defining quality is uniquely your own, a capacity for healing and integration that transcends conventional magical categories. Nurture that gift, young Potter. The wizarding world may need it more than you realize in the years to come. The cryptic statement remained with Harry throughout their journey back to their accommodations, adding to the contemplative mood that had settled over him following the extraordinary meeting. That evening, after dinner at a local magical restaurant where they discussed the day's revelations, Harry finally opened the wooden box in the privacy of their suite. Inside lay a collection of parchments covered in faded ink, some in Latin, others in ancient forms of English, and still others in runic scripts that Harry recognized from his studies with Professor Babbling. Accompanying the notes was a small crystal vial containing what appeared to be liquid silver, labeled simply, Memoria Ignotus, in elegant script. A memory vial, Remus identified, examining the container carefully. Extremely old, but preserved through powerful magic. Likely viewable in a pensieve. Flamel mentioned arranging access to one at the French Ministry's Historical Research Department tomorrow if we're interested. Sirius added, studying the parchments with obvious fascination. This is extraordinary, Harry. Direct research notes from one of your ancestors who worked with Flamel himself. Harry handled the ancient materials with care, his expression thoughtful as he examined the contents. The notes mention soul magic, he observed, translating one of the Latin passages. Research on how magical signatures persist after death under certain conditions. Sirius and Remus exchanged meaningful glances, both recognizing the potential relevance to Harry's own history with the Horcrux and its removal. This could provide valuable context for understanding your unique magical development, Remus suggested carefully. Perhaps insights into why your core recovered so completely after the extraction ritual. Harry nodded, continuing to study the materials with the serious focus that characterized his approach to magical knowledge. It's strange, he said finally, looking up at his godfather. I never thought much about having magical ancestors beyond my parents. But this means I'm part of a longer magical lineage, one that was researching important magical questions centuries ago. The Potter family has always had a significant place in magical history, Sirius confirmed. Though they typically avoided political prominence, preferring to advance magical knowledge through research and innovation. Your grandfather Fleamont revolutionized potion making with his hair care formulations, made the family fortune that way, actually. And your grandmother Euphemia was a renowned magical healer who pioneered treatments for dragon pox, Remus added. Your natural affinity for healing magic may well come from her influence. For Harry, whose understanding of his family legacy had been largely defined by his parents' sacrifice during the war against Voldemort, this broader historical context offered a new perspective on his place in the wizarding world. Beyond being the boy who lived or even James and Lily's son, he was now connecting to a deeper magical heritage that had shaped wizarding knowledge across centuries. I want to understand all of it, he declared, carefully returning the parchments to their box. Not just for myself, but because it feels important somehow, like these connections to the past might matter for the future too. Sirius rested a hand on Harry's shoulder, his expression a mixture of pride and something more complex. We'll explore it together, Prongslet. That's a promise. Later that night, after Harry had fallen asleep, Sirius and Remus conferred quietly in the suite's sitting room, the implications of the day's revelations still unfolding in their minds. Flamel knows about the Horcrux extraction, Remus stated with certainty. That reference to soul magic and Harry's unique magical circumstances was too specific to be coincidental. Sirius nodded grimly. Dumbledore must have shared the information. Though I suspect Flamel would have identified the signature anyway, given his expertise in magical essences. The question is why he chose now to connect Harry to the Peveril research, Remus mused. And whether it relates to those Death Eater activities back home. I intend to find out, Sirius replied, his expression hardening momentarily before softening as he glanced toward Harry's bedroom door. But whatever Flamel's motives, the connection to his family's magical legacy is genuinely valuable for Harry. You saw how it affected him, giving him context beyond being James and Lily's son or the boy who lived. Remus agreed thoughtfully. It's another piece of his identity reclaimed, moving from being defined by tragedy to understanding his place in a broader magical continuity. Legacy reclaimed, Sirius murmured, echoing a phrase they had often used to describe Harry's journey from the desperate, magic-starved child rescued from the Dursleys to the confident young wizard now sleeping peacefully in the next room. Perhaps that's what Flamel intended all along. As their conversation continued into the night, plans forming for further exploration of the Peveril connection while maintaining Harry's balanced development, either man noticed the faint glow emanating briefly from beneath the boy's bedroom door, a silvery light that pulsed once before fading, as if something ancient had recognized a long-awaited heir. The return to Britain brought a flurry of activity, as Harry's education resumed its regular schedule, now enhanced by the new perspectives gained during their French sojourn. The Peveril materials had been carefully secured in Windward Cottage's warded library, with regular study sessions scheduled between Harry's other lessons to gradually explore their contents. October arrived with crisp autumn breezes and preparations for the magical equinox celebrations that had become tradition at the cottage. Unlike the rigid suppression of magical holidays Harry had experienced at the Dursleys, Sirius had enthusiastically embraced seasonal celebrations as part of reconnecting Harry to his magical heritage. "The pumpkins in the West Garden are ready for carving," Harry announced, returning from his morning herbology work with Neville, who had become a weekly visitor for their shared plant magic studies. "And the light-capturing gourds are almost fully charged. They should glow for the entire night by the equinox." "Excellent," Sirius approved, looking up from the correspondence he'd been reviewing at the kitchen table. "Augustus confirmed they'll join us for the celebration, along with Susan and Amelia. Evelyn's bringing her apprentice as well. The gathering would be relatively small, as all their celebrations were, given security considerations, but would include the core group of friends and allies who had supported Harry's development over the years. These seasonal rituals had evolved into important markers of belonging for Harry, creating positive magical traditions to replace the negative associations of his early childhood. "Is Uncle Mooney back from London yet?" Harry asked, washing garden soil from his hands at the sink. "He promised to help with the illumination charms for the garden pathway. Due this afternoon," Sirius replied, a subtle tension in his voice catching Harry's attention despite his casual tone. "He's meeting with Dumbledore and some others about educational matters." Harry turned, studying his godfather with the perceptiveness that sometimes caught adults off guard. "This is about the Death Eater activity, isn't it? Not education." Sirius sighed, setting aside the pretense. They had established years ago that honesty, appropriately framed for Harry's age and emotional readiness, was preferable to protective deception. "Partially, yes. There have been more incidents since we returned from France, minor ones, but following a pattern that concerns the D-Melee." Harry nodded, absorbing this with the gravity that occasionally reminded Sirius how much his godson had already endured in his young life. "Is that why the wards were reinforced again last week? I felt the magical fluctuations." "Yes," Sirius confirmed. "Bill added some additional Egyptian protections to complement the existing schema. Purely precautionary," he added, not wanting to cause undue anxiety. Harry was quiet for a moment, then asked the question Sirius had been anticipating. "Do they think Voldemort might be returning somehow? Because of the Horcruxes?" The directness of the inquiry reflected Harry's growing understanding of his own history. As he had matured, the simplified explanations of his parents' deaths and his connection to Voldemort had gradually been supplemented with more complete information, including the basic concept of Horcruxes and why the fragment in his scar had required removal. "It's one theory being investigated," Sirius acknowledged carefully. "The Unspeakables believe the Horcrux from your scar was likely not the only one created. If others exist, they could potentially be used in dark rituals aimed at restoring Voldemort to some form of existence." Rather than showing fear at this possibility, Harry's expression turned thoughtful. "The Peveril research mentions something similar, magical essences persisting through anchored fragments." He hesitated. "I've been dreaming about it sometimes. Not nightmares exactly, but strange visions." This was new information, and Sirius straightened in concern. "What kind of visions, Harry?" "Mostly symbolic things, a cup, a locket, a diadem. Objects that seem to pulse with dark energy." Harry described the dreams matter-of-factly. "And sometimes a graveyard with a large stone angel. It doesn't feel threatening, more like information being offered." Sirius controlled his reaction carefully, though internally, alarm bells were ringing. The objects Harry described matched rumors about possible Voldemort Horcruxes that the Order had been investigating. "How long have you been having these dreams?" "Since the Death Eater attacks this summer," Harry admitted. "I didn't mention them because they didn't seem like the warning kind of dreams, more like pieces of a puzzle I'm supposed to understand eventually." The casual way Harry differentiated between types of magical dreams, as if such experiences were simply part of normal wizarding life, reminded Sirius how remarkably the boy had adapted to his magical heritage despite his traumatic early years. "I'd like you to document these dreams when they occur," Sirius requested, keeping his tone even to avoid unnecessarily alarming Harry. And perhaps discuss them with Evelyn during your next healing session. She has expertise in magical dream interpretation through her mind healing certification. Harry agreed readily, and their conversation shifted to more immediate matters of the upcoming equinox celebration. But that evening, after Harry had retired to bed, Sirius called an emergency meeting with Remus, Amelia Bones, and Bill Weasley to discuss the concerning development. The objects he described match exactly with what Dumbledore's been researching. Bill confirmed grimly after Sirius related Harry's dream descriptions. Hufflepuff's cup, Slytherin's locket, Ravenclaw's diadem, all items rumored to have disappeared around the time Voldemort was gaining power. And all potential Horcrux vessels. Amelia added, her normally composed features tight with concern. The question is how Harry is perceiving them in dreams when he's never been shown images of these artifacts. The scar connection may have left magical residue even after the Horcrux was removed, Remus suggested, referencing research they had conducted during Harry's recovery. Not enough to influence him directly, but perhaps sufficient to create a magical sensitivity to other fragments from the same source. Or it could be related to the Peveril materials, Sirius pointed out. Flamel specifically mentioned research on magical imprints persisting after death. If Harry's studying that content while these magical artifacts are becoming more active, the implications hung heavily in the air. Harry's unique magical sensitivity, combined with his historical connection to Voldemort through the scar and potentially amplified by his study of ancestral soul magic research, had apparently created a channel through which he was receiving information about hidden Horcruxes. We need to determine whether these dreams represent a danger to Harry himself, Amelia stated pragmatically. Is this a passive reception of information, or could it potentially create a renewed connection to Voldemort's consciousness? Evelyn should conduct a full magical assessment, Remus agreed. And perhaps we should consider pausing Harry's study of the Peveril materials until we better understand the interaction. Sirius nodded reluctantly, though the thought of restricting Harry's exploration of his family's magical legacy troubled him. We'll proceed cautiously. But I think we should also consider whether these dreams might actually represent an opportunity. If Harry is somehow perceiving the locations or nature of other Horcruxes, that information could be crucial to preventing Voldemort's potential return. Bill finished the thought. But extracting it without putting Harry at risk would require extremely careful handling. Harry's safety and well-being remain our absolute priority, Sirius stated firmly. Any information gathered through these dreams will be treated as a secondary benefit, not a primary objective. The meeting concluded with a series of action items: enhanced monitoring of Harry's magical signature during sleep, consultation with both Evelyn and specialized unspeakables about dream connections to magical artifacts, and discreet investigation of the specific objects Harry had described. When Sirius finally retired to his own bedroom in the early hours of the morning, his thoughts were troubled by the complex intersection of pride and concern he felt for his godson. Harry's extraordinary magical development had always been a source of wonder, but with it came unique challenges and responsibilities that most children never faced. "We're doing our best, James," he murmured to his absent friend, a habit he had never quite abandoned in moments of uncertainty. "Keeping him safe while helping him grow into his potential. But sometimes I wonder if we're preparing him for what's coming or just delaying the inevitable confrontation." The question remained unanswered as sleep finally claimed him, but in his dreams, Sirius stood in a sunlit garden watching Harry demonstrating complex magic to a circle of admiring friends, confident, powerful, and surrounded by love and support. Whether premonition or merely hopeful imagining, the image provided comfort amid the growing shadows of uncertainty. The autumn equinox celebration transformed Windward Cottage's gardens into a magical wonderland. Glowing orbs floated among the trees, enchanted pumpkins carved with magical symbols lined the pathways, and at the center of the main garden, a bonfire of magical blue flames provided warmth without consuming its fuel. Harry moved among the guests with growing social confidence, his previous shyness giving way to the genuine pleasure he found in connecting with the extended network of friends and allies who had become his de facto extended family. Now approaching his 10th birthday, he carried himself with the quiet dignity that had become his hallmark. Polite without being formal, knowledgeable without being pretentious, and occasionally mischievous in ways that delighted Sirius and reminded others of James Potter at his best. The light-capturing gourds worked perfectly, he explained to Madame Longbottom as they toured the illuminated herb garden. Neville helped me adjust the absorption charms to account for the shorter autumn daylight hours. Augusta Longbottom nodded approvingly, her formidable demeanor softening as it often did around Harry, whose friendship had helped her grandson blossom from a timid, magic-fearing child into a confident young herbologist. Neville mentioned your collaborative work. Most impressive for wizards your age. Nearby, Susan Bones and Hannah Abbott, another recent addition to Harry's social circle, were examining the magical bonfire under Remus's supervision, learning about the ancient traditions of equinox celebrations in wizarding culture. The blue flames represent the transition between seasons. Remus explained, his natural teaching abilities evident in his engaging presentation. Traditional communities would use them for divination on equinox nights, seeking glimpses of significant events in the coming months. The girls listened with fascination, particularly Hannah, whose Muggle-born mother had not passed down many magical traditions. For Harry, observing from a short distance, these moments of magical cultural transmission represented exactly what the seasonal celebrations were meant to provide: connection to wizarding heritage without the blood purism that had poisoned so much of magical society during Voldemort's rise. As the evening progressed, the gathering moved to the central garden for the traditional equinox ritual, a simple but meaningful ceremony focused on balance and renewal. Unlike the more rigid pureblood observations or the completely secularized ministry versions, Sirius had crafted an inclusive approach that honored magical traditions while welcoming participants from diverse backgrounds. The equinox reminds us that balance is not static but cyclical, Sirius explained as guests formed a circle around the blue flames. Light and darkness, growth and rest, taking and giving, all exist in perpetual dance rather than opposition. Harry took his place at the northern point of the circle, representing Earth in the elemental alignment. Susan stood at the eastern point for air, Neville at the southern point for fire, and Hannah at the western point for water, the four children anchoring the ritual, while the adults completed the circle between them. As the ceremony began, Harry felt the familiar resonance of garden magic responding to their intentions. Plants seemed to lean slightly toward the circle, their magical signatures harmonizing with the ritual energy building among the participants. When his turn came to invoke the earth element, Harry extended his wandless magic in the way that had become natural to him, connecting with the ground beneath their feet. We honor Earth, foundation of life, holder of memory, keeper of roots, he intoned, following the traditional words while infusing them with personal meaning. As autumn deepens, may we be grounded in wisdom passed through generations, connected to those who came before us. As he spoke, small flowers bloomed spontaneously around the circle's perimeter, not conjured through specific spellwork but manifesting from the garden's response to his magical intention. Several guests exchanged impressed glances at this unconscious display of Harry's growing power, though Harry himself barely noticed, focused on maintaining the elemental connection. The ritual continued with each cardinal direction invoked in turn, building a harmonious magical field that encompassed the entire gathering. When the final words were spoken and the circle gently closed, Harry felt the familiar sense of completion and renewal that these seasonal observances always brought, a confirmation of his place within both the natural world and the magical community. As the formal portion of the evening concluded and guests moved toward the refreshment tables, Evelyn Clearwater approached Harry with her apprentice, a quiet young woman named Penelope who was studying specialized healing magic under her guidance. "That was beautiful wandless work during the ritual, Harry," Evelyn commented warmly. "The garden responded to you like a familiar friend." Harry smiled, genuinely pleased by her recognition. Though their relationship had evolved from primary healer and patient to something more akin to mentor and protege, Evelyn's approval still carried special significance for him. "I've been practicing connecting to larger magical systems rather than just individual plants," he explained. The techniques in Hufflepuff's healing text are helping me understand how living magic networks communicate. Fascinating approach, Penelope remarked, her academic interest evident. Most magical theory treats environmental magic as passive background, not as an active participant in magical workings. That's because most wizards try to impose their will on magic rather than collaborating with what's already there, Harry replied, echoing perspectives he had absorbed during their visit to Beauxbatons and from Flamel's discussions. But when you listen first, you discover magic already has intentions and patterns that you can work with instead of against. The insight, delivered matter-of-factly by a not-quite 10-year-old, momentarily startled Penelope, though Evelyn merely nodded in understanding. She had observed Harry's unique magical philosophy developing over years, watching as he intuitively discovered approaches that aligned with ancient traditions largely forgotten in contemporary magical education. Their conversation shifted to Harry's ongoing healing studies, with Evelyn answering questions about a particular diagnostic technique he had been practicing. Throughout their exchange, she observed him with the professional assessment that remained part of their relationship despite its evolution, noting both his magical progress and his emotional well-being with practiced attention. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Evelyn found a moment to speak privately with Sirius about her observations. His magical signature shows no signs of distress or external influence, she reported, addressing the concerns about Harry's dreams that had prompted increased monitoring. If anything, it's more cohesive and stable than ever, fully integrated despite the unusual dream experiences. That's reassuring, Sirius acknowledged. And the dreams themselves? Based on his descriptions, they appear to be perceptive rather than invasive, Evelyn explained. More like magical scrying than any form of possession or influence. His mind remains entirely his own. Sirius nodded, some of the tension visibly leaving his shoulders. And your assessment of how we should proceed regarding the Peveril materials? Evelyn considered this question carefully. I believe restricting his access now could create more harm than benefit. Harry's approach to this material has been remarkably mature, scholarly and measured rather than obsessive. Treating it as forbidden knowledge might assign it undue importance or create unnecessary anxiety. That aligns with my instincts as well, Sirius admitted. He's handling the information responsibly, and the historical connection to his family's magical legacy has been profoundly meaningful for him. Their discussion was interrupted by laughter from across the garden, where Harry and his friends had gathered around Remus for what appeared to be an impromptu lesson on moon-influenced magical plants. The children's faces were illuminated by both the magical lights and the genuine enjoyment of learning in a social context, a picture of normal magical childhood that had once seemed an impossible dream for the traumatized boy rescued from Privet Drive. He's thriving, Sirius, Evelyn said softly, following his gaze. Whatever challenges lie ahead, you've given him the foundation to face them from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. That's the greatest protection anyone could offer. As the evening drew to a close and guests began to depart, Harry found a quiet moment with Sirius at the edge of the garden, both looking out toward the sea where moonlight danced on the waves below the cliffs. Thank you for tonight, Harry said simply. For all of it, really. The celebrations, the friends, the connection to magical traditions. It feels right. Sirius rested a hand on Harry's shoulder, struck by how the boy now reached nearly to his chest in height, another sign of the passage of time and healthy development that sometimes caught him by surprise. Your parents would have loved these gatherings, he replied, knowing how much such connections meant to Harry. Your mother especially appreciated the seasonal magic. Said it reminded her that magic existed in the world long before wizards tried to codify and control it. Harry nodded thoughtfully. That's what I feel when I'm working with the garden magic or practicing elemental manipulation. Like I'm connecting to something much older and wiser than textbook spells. The insight, so reminiscent of discussions Sirius remembered having with Lily Potter, created a momentary lump in his throat. You have her intuition about magical essence, he managed after a moment. And your father's creativity in applying it. It's a powerful combination. They stood in companionable silence for a time, watching the moonlight on the water while the sounds of the remaining guests saying their goodbyes drifted from the house behind them. It was a peaceful moment that Sirius wished he could preserve, Harry safe and happy, their extended family of friends supporting his development, the future still holding possibilities rather than fixed challenges. "I had another dream last night," Harry said finally, his voice quiet but steady. "About the objects, but clearer this time. I could see locations: a large old house on a hill, a bank vault deep underground, and what looked like a hidden room at Hogwarts." Sirius tensed slightly but maintained his outward calm. "Did you record the details as we discussed?" "Yes," Harry confirmed. "And I drew sketches of what I saw. The images were very specific this time, like memories rather than dreams." He paused. "They're important somehow, aren't they? These objects I'm seeing." "We believe they might be," Sirius acknowledged carefully. "Magical artifacts with connections to Voldemort, possibly similar to what was removed from your scar." Harry absorbed this without visible distress, his expression thoughtful rather than frightened. "That makes sense. They feel related somehow. Like pieces of a puzzle that need to be found and dealt with." The mature perspective reminded Sirius yet again that Harry's experiences had created a child who processed information differently from his peers, neither naive nor unnecessarily burdened, but clear-eyed about magical realities that most adults preferred to ignore. "We're investigating the objects and locations," Sirius assured him, "with help from trustworthy allies who understand the significance. Your dreams may be providing valuable guidance." Harry nodded, seemingly satisfied with this approach. "I'm not afraid of the dreams," he said after a moment. "They don't feel threatening to me personally. More like information being offered because I'm able to receive it for some reason." "Your magical sensitivity has always been exceptional," Sirius replied, choosing his words carefully. "Combined with your history and perhaps your family's magical legacy through the Peveril line, it may have created unique perceptive abilities." This explanation appeared to resonate with Harry, who had been developing his own theories based on his study of the Peveril materials and his intuitive understanding of magical connections. "If the dreams are helping identify these objects so they can be dealt with properly, then I'm glad to have them," he stated with simple determination. "Better to know what we're facing than to be surprised by it later." The practical wisdom in this statement, so characteristic of Harry's approach to challenges, filled Sirius with both pride and a touch of sadness. At not quite 10, his godson was already engaging with complex magical threats with a clarity and courage that many adults failed to muster. "Just promise you'll continue sharing these experiences with me and the healing team," Sirius requested. "Monitoring the magical effects is important for your well-being, even if the dreams themselves don't feel harmful." "I promise," Harry agreed readily. "No secrets about important things, that's always been our rule." As they turned to rejoin the remaining guests and help with the celebration's conclusion, Sirius reflected on how far they had come from those early desperate days after Harry's rescue. The fragile, magic-starved child had grown into a confident young wizard with extraordinary abilities and a strong sense of identity rooted in both his immediate family and his broader magical heritage. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whether from resurging Death Eater activity, the potential return of Voldemort, or simply the normal complexities of growing up in the wizarding world, Harry was facing them from a position of strength, supported by love and equipped with both magical skill and emotional resilience. His legacy had been reclaimed, not just the Potter name or his place in wizarding society, but the deeper magical heritage that connected him to centuries of magical knowledge and tradition. As Sirius watched Harry engaging with the last departing guests, explaining some aspect of the garden magic to an attentive Madame Bones, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment mingled with continuing responsibility. The boy who lived had become simply Harry, extraordinary in his magical gifts but grounded in love, confident in his abilities but connected to others, aware of the shadows in his past but focused on the light he could bring to the future. It was, Sirius reflected, exactly what James and Lily would have wished for their son, not fame or power for their own sake, but the freedom to grow into his full potential surrounded by those who valued him for himself rather than his legend. As the last guests departed and Harry began helping with the garden cleanup, using wandless magic to gently extinguish the floating lights and preserve the enchanted pumpkins for future use, Sirius found himself offering silent gratitude to the Muggle teacher whose concern had triggered the chain of events leading to Harry's rescue all those years ago. That simple act of human decency had changed everything, revealing the dangerous magical drain before it became irreversible, bringing Harry into proper magical care, and setting him on a path toward becoming the remarkable young wizard now laughing with Remus as they coaxed the magical bonfire into a spectacular final display before extinguishing it for the night. Ready to head inside? Sirius called as the garden gradually returned to its normal nighttime state. Hot chocolate with a touch of equinox spice before bed? Harry's smile in response, open and genuine in a way that still sometimes caught Sirius by surprise, was answer enough. Together, Godfather and Godson walked toward the warmly lit cottage, leaving the garden to its peaceful darkness and the sea to its eternal rhythm beyond the cliffs. Whatever dreams might come that night, whatever challenges might await in the future, the foundation they had built together remained strong, a legacy reclaimed and transformed into something new yet anchored in the best of what had come before. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.